Chapter 2477. That's all you've got. And here I was thinking how strong you were. Trash like you dares to clamor with Big Brother? Are you having a high fever? The big black wolf looked at the skinny young man with contempt. The skinny young man crawled up in a sorry state. His face was filled with anger as he roared. You're so despicable. You didn't even say anything before attacking. Qin Feiyong was amused. The big black wolf was also amused. Qin Feiyong directly put away the jade box and looked at the young man. It seems that not only is there a problem with your IQ, there's also a problem with your brain. Cough cough. Big brother, correct me. A problem with your IQ and a problem with your brain are actually the same problem. The big black wolf coughed dryly and looked at Qin Feiyong. That's true. Qin Feiyong nodded. The big black wolf chuckled and looked at the skinny young man. When you go to find trouble with others, don't you have to tell them in advance that I'm coming to find trouble with you? Prepare yourself. Hearing this, the skinny young man's face immediately turned green and red. The big black wolf shook his head and said, The brain is a good thing, but unfortunately you don't have it. Cut the crap, let's fight. The skinny young man roared as his divine power surged and pounced towards Qin Feiyong. Qin Feiyong shook his head. Just as the skinny young man pounced over, he raised his arm and grabbed the young man's neck. At this moment, the skinny young man hung in the air. No matter how hard he struggled, it was useless. Even if I give you 10 or 100 years to prepare, killing you will be as easy as slaughtering a dog. Qin Feiyong exerted force with his 5 fingers, and the skinny young man's neck shattered on the spot. His head fell to the ground with a bang. How can he be so strong? The skinny young man was terrified as his divine soul immediately escaped from his sea of consciousness. But at the same time, Qin Feiyong stomped down, and the skinny young man's head and divine soul were immediately shattered. Blood splattered everywhere. Seeing this scene, the black-clothed man, the 70-year-old man, and the middle-aged man couldn't help but feel their scalps go numb. How cruel! The most shocking thing, he was just a low-level war god. How could he instantly kill a perfect-level war god? Qin Feiyong turned to look at the man in black and asked, Is it okay now? The black-clothed man nodded instinctively. However, he suddenly came to his senses. He had thought of this brilliant plan with great difficulty. So how could it end just like that? If Qin Feiyong knew what he was thinking, he would definitely make fun of him. A peerless plan. These kinds of tricks were all left over from him. The black-robed man glanced at the middle-aged man and transmitted his voice. You go and kill him. Double the reward. I guarantee that I'll insta-kill him. The middle-aged man secretly sneered. Looking at Qin Feiyong, who turned around and left, he shouted, Do you dare to accept my challenge? Qin Feiyong was stunned. He turned around and looked at the middle-aged man. The middle-aged man pointed at the skinny young man's corpse and said, Just like him. No one is allowed to help you regardless of whether you are dead or alive. Big Black Wolf glanced at the middle-aged man and said, Big brother, there's no need to pay attention to trash like this. You'd better shut your dog mouth. Otherwise I'll kill you too. The middle-aged man's eyes turned cold as he stared at Big Black Wolf. Fuck you, are you addicted to being arrogant? Big Black Wolf immediately became angry and roared. Big brother, kill him. Qin Feiyong rushed into the sky and stood in the sky. He looked down at the middle-aged man and said, Come up. Arrogant. The middle-aged man snorted and his aura exploded. He turned into a stream of light and charged toward Qin Feiyong. Look. Someone is fighting in the sky above the Deacon Hall. That person seems to be Li Bu'er. He's causing trouble again. He's lawless. His opponent seems to be Wang Darren. I know Wang Darren. He's a perfect-level paragon god. It seems that they are going to fight one-on-one. No way, he's just a low-level war god. How can he fight a perfect-level paragon god? Isn't that stupid? The people in the nearby caves heard the commotion and ran out. When they saw this scene, they immediately began to talk. Kid, you'll pay the price for being arrogant. Wang Darren's expression was full of coldness. A low-level war god. If it weren't for the fact that he was afraid of the paragon god behind him, he would have been squashed to death like an ant. What's there to be arrogant about? Rushing in front of Qin Feiyong, Wang Darren immediately punched at Qin Feiyong, shattering the void. Yes, You'll pay the price for being arrogant. Qin Feiyang whispered and suddenly retreated. At the same time, he waved his hand and a wave of flames rolled out. Chi-chi. Immediately after, the flames turned into divine lightning, shattering the sky and drowning Wang Darren in an instant. Legendary divine technique, fire thunder divine technique. A miserable scream immediately resounded through the sky. Qin Feiyang didn't give him any chance to counterattack. The divine lightning directly tore open Wang Darren's skull and attacked his soul. No! Accompanied by a terrified cry, Wang Darren's soul was annihilated on the spot. Then, the divine lightning tore Wang Darren's body into pieces, leaving not even a drop of blood. So powerful? I must be dreaming. A low-level war god actually killed a perfected paragon god? The surrounding disciples were all dumbfounded. Below, the black-clothed man and the elder in his 70s were so shocked that they couldn't speak. A moment ago, the middle-aged man swore that he could kill this person, but the next moment, the middle-aged man was killed. What was going on? The elder in his 70s suddenly trembled and said, "Island Lord, he must be hiding his cultivation." Hiding his cultivation? The black-clothed man was stunned, and a trace of hostility appeared in his eyes. No wonder he dared to accept the challenge of the middle-aged man and the skinny young man. You go. He used a divine technique to kill Wang Darren. I guess his cultivation is at most a perfected paragon god. With your half-step 9th heaven realm cultivation, it's easy to kill him. As long as you kill him, I'll give you 100,000 merit points, the black-clothed man said. 100,000 merit points. The elder in his 70s suddenly became excited. To the disciples of the Dragon God Temple, 100,000 merit points was a huge sum of wealth. For example, one could enter the divine technique treasury 100 times. Some people wouldn't be able to gather so many merit points even after thousands of years. Right at this moment, Qin Feiyang lowered his head to look at the old man and said, "You come up as well." Since it was a problem, he would solve it once and for all. The elder in his 70s was stunned. He actually took the initiative to challenge him? Island Lord should have promised you a lot of benefits. If you don't kill me, how will you get these benefits? So I'll give you a chance to kill me. Qin Feiyang said indifferently. Li Bu-er, what nonsense are you talking about? The black-clothed man immediately shouted. Do you think you can fool me with your little tricks? If you want to deal with me, you can do it yourself. There's no need to find trash to help you. Qin Feiyang sneered. The black-clothed man's eyes darkened. This old man is trash. The elder in his 70s clenched his fists and flew into the sky. His aura surged toward Qin Feiyang. Pfft! Qin Feiyang's body trembled, and he immediately spat out a mouthful of blood. You're already spitting blood? This old man hasn't even made a move yet, and you dare to call this old man trash. The elder in his 70s laughed in disdain. Qin Feiyang wiped the blood from the corner of his mouth and rushed into the clouds. Aren't you arrogant? Why are you running? The elder in his 70s sneered and chased after him. The two quickly rushed into the clouds. The elder in his 70s didn't say anything and slapped toward Qin Feiyang's head. Qin Feiyang used the travel word art and narrowly avoided it. After all, the opponent was a half-step 9 heavens realm cultivator. The legendary divine art was useless, so he had to use it. The elder in his 70s was stunned. He didn't expect to be able to dodge it. Qin Feiyang took the opportunity to retreat far away and quietly took out an image crystal. He hid it in his sleeve and said, "What did the island master give you to make you work so hard for him?" 100,000 merits. Your life is really valuable. The elder in his 70s said. Qin Feiyang said, "So that's how it is. Then all of this was planned by him?" Of course. You have the protection of a supreme expert. It's very difficult to kill you, so we have to set a trap for you first. The elder in his 70s sneered. Qin Feiyang shook his head. The elder in his 70s frowned and said, "Why are you shaking your head?" "I'm very disappointed, you know." Qin Feiyang put away the image crystal and said, "The four of you only came up with such a childish plan." Childish? The elder in his 70s froze. What are they doing up there? The black-clothed man raised his head to look at Qin Feiyang and his companion. However, the clouds were blocking his view, so he couldn't see clearly. How dare you say such a perfect plan is childish? Brat, you're really shameless. Go to hell. The elder in his 70s yelled. A wave of black divine power appeared and surged towards Qin Feiyang like a tide. The terrifying aura shook the sky. The clouds were also scattered. Damn. Looks like this old man isn't going to give Li Buer any chance. The onlookers below immediately started to discuss. The man in black was also relieved. As long as a half-step 9 Heavens Realm cultivator was serious, this person wouldn't be able to survive no matter how powerful he was. However, Qin Feiyang's expression didn't change. He didn't fight back. He didn't run away either. Everyone thought he had lost his mind. The elder in his 70s also thought so, and a bright smile appeared on his face. 100,000 merits were in his hands. Clang! However, when the divine power surged in front of Qin Feiyang's body suddenly emitted a bright golden light. In an instant, his skin, hair, and even the bones in his body had turned golden. At this moment, he looked like a bronze man made of gold, and there seemed to be a faint golden Buddha statue behind him. The legendary divine art, Wisdom King Golden Body. Whoosh! After activating the Wisdom King Golden Body, Qin Feiyang took a step forward and passed through the divine power in an instant. Clang! The divine power hit his body and made an ear-piercing metallic sound. No way! Is his body made of iron? Everyone was dumbfounded. The elder in his 70s was also dumbfounded. What the hell? He was a half-step 9 Heavens Realm cultivator. Even if his opponent was hiding his cultivation level, he should be a perfected or perfected paragon god at most. How could a mere paragon god pass through the divine power of a half-step 9 Heavens Realm cultivator? One had to know that there was an insurmountable barrier between the two realms. What was even more unbelievable was that this person wasn't injured at all after passing through. Chapter 2478. But Qin Feiyang didn't stop at all. He took advantage of the old man's daze to attack him. The bright King Golden Body could block a fatal blow from an expert of a higher realm. Now his cultivation was half a step to the divine realm. The old man's cultivation was half a step to the 9th heaven realm. It happened to be the same realm. If the old man's cultivation was one small realm higher, then the bright King Golden Body wouldn't be able to block it. Unfortunately, the old man's cultivation was like this. But after coming out of the divine power, the bright King Golden Body also collapsed. Because the bright King Golden Body could only block one attack. But it didn't matter if it collapsed now, because the old man couldn't do anything. Qin Feiyang raised his arm and pointed his index finger at the old man's forehead. What are you doing? Kill him quickly. The black-clothed man below shouted secretly. The old man suddenly came back to his senses. But Qin Feiyang's fingertip was already on the old man's forehead. Boom! Immediately, a wisp of blood-colored light instantly entered the forehead of the 70-year-old man. With a loud crack, the old man's forehead exploded in the air like a watermelon. Flesh and blood flew everywhere. The blood-colored fleeting grace also immediately dissipated, and no one noticed. Instant kill. Instant kill again. Everyone was shocked, especially the black-clothed man. First it was the skinny young man, then Wang Darren, and now it was the old man. Could it be that they had underestimated this person's cultivation? He was at the 9th heaven realm? Qin Feiyang lowered his arm and looked down at the black-clothed man. He said lightly, "Come up too." What? Openly provoking the island lord. Looks like we have always underestimated him. Actually, his cultivation is as strong as the young man's. Everyone couldn't help but look at the black-clothed man. Would the island lord accept this challenge? The black-clothed man's face was dark. A low-level war god had killed a perfected war god, a perfected god, and a half-step to the 9th heaven realm. He really didn't know Qin Feiyang's true cultivation. Although he was at the 9th heaven realm, he couldn't help but feel guilty at this moment. What if the other party's true cultivation was also at the peak of the 9th heaven realm? Or even an undead stage expert? One had to know. The young man was an imperishable realm expert, but he pretended to be a fake god, pretending to be a pig to eat a tiger. Since this person was acquainted with the young man, their cultivation might really be the same. What is it? As the master of the number 1 island, You don't even dare to accept the challenge of a disciple. Qin Feiyang said contemptuously. The man in black clenched his fists. Not only did he fail to kill the other party, he was even humiliated in public. How could he be so blind to find these 3 pieces of trash? You're such a coward. What a disgrace to you dragons. At this moment, Qin Feiyang appeared very aggressive. He usually didn't cause trouble, but he was never afraid of trouble. Those who provoked him were bound to return an eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth. Whoosh! Right at this moment, a white-haired old man appeared. It was Yi Zhong. Greetings, Grand Hall Master. Although he was a human, when he saw Yi Zhong, the black-robed man did not dare to show the slightest disrespect and hurriedly bowed. Yes. Yi Zhong nodded and looked up at Qin Feiyang. He said with a hoarse smile, "Why are you standing so high? Come down." Qin Feiyang's eyes flashed and fell on the square at the top of the mountain. The big black wolf also ran to Qin Feiyang's side. Yi Zhong looked suspiciously at Qin Feiyang and the black-robed man and asked, "What are you doing?" Qin Feiyang was about to speak. The black-robed man took a step forward and looked at Yi Zhong. "Grand Hall Master, Li Bu'er is simply too arrogant. He killed people in the Dragon God Palace in public. There must be a reason for killing people." At this moment, another lazy voice sounded. He saw a snow python carrying a young man who was dressed in rags across Yi Zhong. "It's him." The surrounding onlookers were shocked. Unexpectedly, not only Yi Zhong was alarmed, but also the young man. Wait. The young man was in the law enforcement hall. How did he get the news so quickly? Could it be he was paying attention to Li Bu'er? In that case, their relationship was indeed not ordinary. The black-robed man also looked at the young man and said in a deep voice, "The Grand Hall Master is here. It's not your turn to ask." The young man was lying on the snow python's head with his hands behind his head. He squinted and still had a green foxtail in his mouth. Hearing the black-robed man's words, he did not open his eyes and said lightly, "Shouldn't the law enforcement hall be in charge of this kind of dispute? Although you're right, the Grand Hall Master is here now. What right do you have to interrupt?" The black-robed man said angrily. "Right?" The young man was stunned and slowly opened his eyes. He got up and sat on the snow python's head with one hand supporting his chin, and the other playing with the green foxtail. He looked down at the black-robed man. Seeing this, the black-robed man could not help but panic. The young man suddenly smiled and said, "Strength is right. Do you have a problem with that?" "You presumptuous!" the black-robed man shouted, but he did not seem to be confident. "I'm not presumptuous. You're courting death." The young man waved his hand, and the green foxtail in his hand, like a streamer, instantly went into the black-robed man's lower abdomen. "Ah!" The black-robed man screamed in pain, and his sea of qi was destroyed on the spot. Then, that green foxtail swept out from the black-robed man's back, and blood splattered everywhere. The most important thing was, that green foxtail was not damaged at all, and there was not a drop of blood on it. It was still as clean as before. Finally, the green foxtail returned to the young man's hand and said with the corner of his mouth, "As the law enforcement hall master, not only do I have the power to kill disciples, but I also have the power to kill you island masters. Do you have a problem with that?" "Grand Hall Master." The black-robed man was seriously in pain and looked at Yi Zhong with a face full of indignation. "What he said is also true. You also have to recognize this point. He is already the law enforcement hall master, and should be treated as a law enforcement hall master. When you see him, you have to salute," Yi Zhong said. The black-robed man's face turned green and red. He did not expect that Yi Zhong would speak for the young man. "Didn't you hear? Do you need me to repeat it?" The young man looked at the black-robed man with ridicule. The black-robed man's pupils shrank, and he helplessly lowered his head. He bowed and said, "Greetings, Hall Master." The young man laughed and returned to his lazy state. He asked, "What's the reason for killing people?" "It's all because of Li Bu'er. He snatched the jade box that Wang Darren and the other 2 picked in the treasure house. And he also threatened Wang Darren and the other 2 that if they didn't give him the jade box, he would kill them. Of course, the 3 of them were not convinced. It's broad daylight and the world is clear. How can he be allowed to seize by force like this? In the end, Li Bu'er really killed the 3 of them without saying anything. I rushed out to stop him, but it was too late. Grand Hall Master, if we don't kill this kind of person, the heavens will not tolerate it. The black-robed man looked at Yi Zhong angrily and roared. What a thief calling the police. What a load of nonsense. The big black wolf was so angry that his body started to tremble. He had never seen such a shameless person. No, he wasn't a human at all. He just had the appearance of a human. Was this the virtue of dragons? They were even more disgusting than some despicable humans. Is that so? Yi Zhong looked at Qin Feiyang and asked. Qin Feiyang looked at Yi Zhong, and then at the black-robed man, and remained silent. Big brother, why aren't you saying anything? This is clearly his scheme. The big black wolf looked at Qin Feiyang anxiously. Qin Feiyang remained silent. However, the black-robed man glared at the big black wolf and scolded. Don't slander us. Fuck you. The big black wolf was instantly furious. He schemed behind their backs, and now he was accusing them? The black-robed man looked at Yi Zhong and bowed. Grand Hall Master, silence means tacit agreement. What I said is the truth, and he has no way to refute it. Please deal with it impartially, Grand Hall Master. Yi Zhong looked at the young man and asked with a smile. According to the rules of the enforcement hall, how do you think we should deal with this matter? Kill, the young man said. The black-robed man sneered in his heart. If even the young man said to kill, do you think you guys have a way out? What if, right then? Qin Feiyang finally spoke. He looked at Yi Zhong and the young man and asked, if all of this is a trap set by the island master, how should we deal with it? He deserves to be killed for breaking the law knowingly. Old man Yi, am I right? The young man glanced at Yi Zhong and asked weakly. Yes. Yi Zhong nodded. The black-robed man looked at Qin Feiyang with mockery in his eyes. Yes, he set all of this up, but do you have evidence? Do you? If you don't have evidence, who would believe what you said? You're still struggling. You're really ignorant. If it were him, he would have knelt down and begged for mercy. There might still be hope for him to live. You deserve to be killed. I like what you said. Qin Feiyang grinned and shook his head at the black-robed man. Do you know? You're the stupidest divine dragon I've ever met. The black-robed man was furious. You think you're very smart, but little do you know that you're just a clown trying to please the crowd. That's all. Qin Feiyang shook his head and smiled. He took out the image crystal. An image unfolded in the void. It was the conversation with the old man in his 70s. What? The black-robed man was stunned. It was only now that he understood why the other party was so calm. He already had solid evidence in his hands. That's too much. How dare he use his power to set up a disciple? Scum. Don't insult him, okay? He's not a human, he's a divine dragon. The surrounding disciples started discussing. Although the conversation between Qin Feiyang and the old man in his 70s was simple, would anyone who could enter the Dragon God Hall be an idiot? One could easily figure out what was going on. Phew. Yi Zhong took a deep breath and looked at the black-robed man. I asked you to come to the first island to maintain order, not to abuse your power and set up a disciple. The black-robed man shuddered and immediately knelt on the ground. Grand Hall Master, I know my mistake, I'll change. Do you think you can let it go just by saying that you know your mistake and change? What's the use of the tribunal council then? The young man said listlessly. The black-robed man looked at the young man in horror. He then looked at Yi Zhong and exclaimed, Grand Hall Master, I'm a dragon after all. Do you think dragons can do whatever they want? The young man took out the dog's tail grass from the corner of his mouth and waved it casually. The dog's tail grass immediately flew out of his hand and shot towards the black-robed man's glabella like a sharp arrow. Chapter 2479. Seeing this, the black-clothed man collapsed to the ground powerlessly. Big Black Wolf gloated over his misfortune. Qin Feiyang remained expressionless. Because such a person was just a small fry in his eyes. There was no need for that. He took it seriously. Whoosh. However, just when everyone thought that the black-clothed man was dead for sure, Yi Zhong suddenly took a step forward and stood in front of the black-clothed man. He raised his aged arm and slapped the green foxtail grass. Clang! The moment the two collided, there was a deafening sound of metal. Furthermore, a golden glove had unknowingly appeared in Yi Zhong's hand. Sparks flew as the green foxtail was sent flying. Yi Zhong's arm was also a little numb. Big Black Wolf was stunned. What does this old man mean? Qin Feiyang could not help but frown. The young man grabbed the green foxtail and raised his eyebrows slightly. Yi Zhong looked at the young man and said, "He belongs to the dragons. He made a mistake and should be handed over to the dragons to deal with. You're clearly protecting him. Who was the one who said that he deserved to be killed?" Big Black Wolf said angrily. Yi Zhong said indifferently, "He does deserve to be killed, but it has to be done by the dragons themselves. We humans have no right to kill the dragons." Big Black Wolf shouted, "If we hand him over to the dragons, will the dragons handle it impartially?" Yi Zhong said, "It's their business whether they want to handle it impartially or not. I can't control it, and I have no right to control it." Qin Feiyang said, "You're protecting him. You really don't hide it at all." "I've never protected anyone." Yi Zhong shook his head. "You're right. You're only protecting the dragons, because the dragons are not humans." Qin Feiyang said. Yi Zhong was not angry. He just smiled faintly and turned to the black-clothed man. "Go back to the dragons and accept your punishment." "Yes." The black-clothed man nodded respectfully. He stood up and looked at Qin Feiyang and the big black wolf. A hint of mockery flashed in his eyes as he opened an altar and jumped onto it without looking back. "Bastard!" The big black wolf was furious. Qin Feiyang grabbed it and said indifferently, "Let him go." But the big black wolf was extremely unwilling. Qin Feiyang looked up at Yi Zhong and said with a smile, "Believe me, you will regret it. This old man has never done anything that he regrets." Yi Zhong laughed hoarsely. "That was in the past. It's hard to say what will happen in the future." After Qin Feiyang finished speaking, he nodded to the young man, opened the altar, and left with the big black wolf. "Old man Yi, you have to pay the price for doing wrong." The young man glanced at Yi Zhong and said meaningfully. Then he instructed the snow python. The snow python immediately carried him away. "Price," Yi Zhong murmured. Suddenly, he smiled and walked away, disappearing step by step. Sigh. This Yi Zhong is indeed the most loyal dog of the dragons. Yes, the evidence is irrefutable. Release the island master. In front of the powerful dragons, we humans are really inferior. The nearby disciples could not help but sigh. In the valley, in the cave abode. "Big brother, there must be an explanation for this matter." "Why?" The big black wolf was so angry that it was stomping its feet in the cave abode. Qin Feiyang glanced at it and took out the image crystal. Buzz! A shadow appeared. It was Jiang Dafei. "Young lord." Jiang Dafei bowed. Qin Feiyang waved his hand, and the shadow of the black-clothed man appeared. He looked at Qin Feiyang and said, "Tell the divine general immediately that this person must die." "Who is he?" Jiang Dafei was surprised. Qin Feiyang said, "The island master of the first island is currently on his way back to Divine Dragon Island." "All right. This subordinate will inform Lord Divine General." Jiang Dafei nodded. "Ah." The big black wolf looked at Qin Feiyang in a daze, and suddenly said, "So you already had a plan?" "Yi Zhong wants to protect him, but I want him to die," Qin Feiyang said indifferently. "Haha." The big black wolf laughed out loud, and was no longer angry. He took out the jade box that he had obtained from the Divine Art Treasury and said, "Big brother, I took it according to what you said. Don't let it be a useless inferior divine art. Open it and you'll know." Qin Feiyang smiled. To be honest, he was looking forward to it. What kind of divine art was inside the jade box that the big black wolf had obtained? The big black wolf slowly opened the jade box, and a black jade scroll appeared. However, the big black wolf did not check it immediately. He raised his head and looked at Qin Feiyang, feeling a little nervous. "Trust me," Qin Feiyang said. "All right." The big black wolf nodded, took out the jade scroll, and poured his spirit sense into it. At that moment, its expression froze. Immediately after, a look of ecstasy crawled up from its eyes. Even its body couldn't help but tremble. At this moment, there was a message in its mind. Serious Devil Book. Legendary level divine art. A total of 4 moves. Each move had the power to pierce through the heavens and earth, destroying mountains and rivers. Just by looking at the name, one could tell that it was definitely a divine art that was tailor-made for wolves. And what made the big black wolf excited was that it was actually a legendary level divine art. A divine art of this level was something that it had dreamed of obtaining. Now that it had finally fulfilled its wish, how could it not be excited? The big black wolf excitedly looked up at Qin Feiyang and said, "Big brother, you must have fiery eyes of truth." "Ha!" Qin Feiyang laughed dryly. This had nothing to do with him at all. It was all thanks to the Shadowless. Unbelievable. How did you know that this jade box contained a legendary level divine artifact? The big black wolf became more and more curious. One had to know. The jade box was completely closed, and divine sense couldn't peek inside. However, Big Brother actually knew that there was a legendary level divine art inside. It was really strange. Qin Feiyang smiled faintly, and also took out the jade box obtained from the divine art treasure house. The big black wolf's gaze immediately shifted to the jade box. Inside this jade box, could it also be a legendary level divine art? Qin Feiyang gently opened the jade box, and a wave of fire suddenly surged out. The cave also instantly turned into a big furnace. Inside the jade box, there was a fiery red jade slip lying there, as if it was cast from magma. This vision, it must be a legendary level divine art, the big black wolf muttered. Qin Feiyang took out the jade slip, sank his divine sense into it, and a piece of information immediately poured into his mind. Qilin technique, sovereign level divine art. A total of 4 moves. It's not a lie. It really is a sovereign level divine art. Qin Feiyang whispered. What? Sovereign level divine art? Hearing this, the big black wolf was dumbfounded. He thought it was a legendary level divine art, but didn't expect it to be a sovereign level divine art. It really wasn't a joke? One had to know. In the entire divine art treasure house, there was only one sovereign level divine art. To be able to get this, how heaven-defying was his luck. Let me see. The big black wolf snatched the jade slip, and his divine sense directly poured in. At that moment, its body stiffened. It was indeed a sovereign-level divine art. Big brother, you can really see the divine art inside the jade box? After coming back to his senses, the big black wolf raised his head and looked at Qin Feiyang, shocked to the extreme. Serious demonic book, Qilin tactic. A legendary level divine art. A sovereign level divine art. To say that it was luck. Even if you beat him to death, he wouldn't believe it. Because no matter how good his luck was, it was impossible to obtain 2 shocking divine arts at once. Qin Feiyang laughed. Didn't I say before, I have a benefactor? Benefactor? The big black wolf was stunned. In the divine art treasure house, Qin Feiyang did say something about a benefactor. But who was this benefactor? Big sister? Hui. Madman. It was impossible even if one thought about it. Although Hui and Big Sister's cultivation were strong, one was wandering outside while the other was inside the castle. Not to mention Madman, who had only just become a god. White-eyed wolf. Then there was no need to say. He was in seclusion without paying attention to the outside world. The big black wolf begged. Big brother, can you not keep me in suspense? Just tell me directly. This was too shocking. He could actually see the divine art inside the jade box. It's a secret. Qin Feiyang smiled faintly. The big black wolf couldn't help but go crazy, but there was nothing he could do. Let's go. Go to the castle to cultivate these 2 divine arts. Qin Feiyang laughed. The big black wolf nodded. At the entrance square. Tell this old man in detail. How did Li Buer kill those 3 people in an instant? Yi Zhong looked at the man in black standing in front of him and said, Yes. The black-clothed man replied respectfully. Then he recounted the process of the battle in detail. Flame divine thunder. Golden body of iron. When Yi Zhong heard this, he muttered to himself. Suddenly, he looked at the man in black in surprise and asked, Could it be the fire thunder divine art and the bright king golden body? Fire thunder divine art? Bright king golden body? The man in black was stunned, his face puzzled. Yi Zhong pondered for a while, then shook his head and said, You shouldn't know about these divine arts, because these 2 divine arts were personally placed by this old man in the 9 heaven realms examination grounds. In that case, he obtained these two divine techniques from the examination grounds? The man in black said, if it's really the bright king golden body and the fire thunder divine art, then they must have been found at the examination grounds. You go back to Divine Dragon Island first. Yi Zhong waved his hand and said, yes. The man in black nodded, turned around and left the Dragon God Palace, and rushed down the stone stairs. Yi Zhong lowered his head and muttered, boom. Suddenly, at the bottom of the stone stairs, a deafening sound rang out. Following closely, a miserable cry sounded. Yi Zhong was stunned, then immediately turned into a stream of light, flew out of the stone door, and flew down. When he reached the bottom of the corpse, he saw a black divine dragon lying on the broken ground. Its head and divine soul had already been shattered. Dragon blood spewed out, dyeing the ground red. This was the true body of the man in black. But he was already dead. Yi Zhong looked at the corpse, then suddenly raised his head and scanned the void. At the same time, his spirit sense surged out, covering the sky and earth. Those dark eyes were suffused with a strong cold light. But in the void, he couldn't find anything. There was also no aura of the murderer left behind. It was obvious that it had been deliberately erased. Good method. Yi Zhong muttered, retracted his spirit sense, buried the corpse on the spot, and turned to return to the Dragon God Palace. Boom! Inside the ancient castle, Qin Feiyang stood in the hall, comprehending the Qilin method. Suddenly, a terrifying aura suddenly descended above the valley. This is Qin Feiyang frowned. It seemed to be Yi Zhong's aura? This anger, could it be that the man in black had already been killed? At that moment, he got up and appeared in the cave abode. Boom! It was also at this moment that a spirit sense surged over. Swish! The next moment, a white-haired old man appeared in the cave abode. Who else could it be but Yi Zhong? Chapter 2480. Chief Palace Master Yi? Why do you miss me so soon? Qin Feiyang looked at Yi Zhong in surprise. Don't play dumb. Did you kill him? Yi Zhong said in a deep voice. Who? Qin Feiyang was suspicious. Yi Zhong said, the island master of the first island. What? The island master is dead? Qin Feiyang was stunned. Yi Zhong looked at Qin Feiyang, his eyes shining. Wait. No. Didn't the island master return to the Divine Dragon Island? How could he be dead? Chief Palace Master Yi, don't joke. Qin Feiyang said. However, he was secretly laughing in his heart. This divine general was really efficient in his work. Yi Zhong said. Just a while ago, he was assassinated at the bottom of the stone stairs. It can't be. Who dares to kill the people of the dragons? Don't they want to live? Wait. Chief Palace Master Yi, you're not suspecting me, are you? I just came back from the Divine Technique Treasury. It's impossible to suspect me. Qin Feiyang said. The murderer is definitely not you. But it must be related to you. Yi Zhong frowned and said. I can't bear this accusation. Please let me go. As for the island master's death. What's the saying? Yes, yes, yes. Good will be rewarded, evil will be punished. Heaven is fair. Those who deserve to die can't escape. Qin Feiyang said with a smile. Yi Zhong frowned and said. Let's not talk about this for now. When you killed Wang Darren and the other two, did you use the Fire Thunder Divine Technique and Wisdom King Golden Body? Qin Feiyang said with a smile. You're so resourceful. You can definitely find out. Yi Zhong said helplessly. It's chaotic outside recently. Don't run around. After saying that, he turned around and left. This kid was so young, but how could he be like an old fox, watertight? Thank you for your concern. Take care. Qin Feiyang smiled as he looked at Yi Zhong's back. After Yi Zhong left, a cold smile appeared on Qin Feiyang's face. Did he really think that he could return to Divine Dragon Island alive? Naive and laughable. However, this matter was not over yet. The best part was yet to come. Just wait and see. If I say I'll make you regret it, I'll definitely make you regret it. Immediately after, Qin Feiyang entered the ancient castle again, and continued to cultivate the Qilin art. In the square, Yi Zhong sat on the ground and frowned. He dared to conclude that the death of the black-clothed man was definitely related to this kid. But he couldn't produce any evidence. Suddenly, Yi Zhong took out an image crystal. Wang. A short while later, Another white-robed old man appeared. He was the deputy hall master of the law enforcement hall. Big brother, is something the matter? The deputy hall master looked at Yi Zhong suspiciously. Yi Zhong said, "Come here first." "All right." The deputy hall master nodded. Very soon, he landed on the square and walked in front of Yi Zhong. He asked suspiciously, "Big brother, what's the matter?" Yi Zhong asked, "Do you know what happened in the Divine Art Treasury? I just heard about it. This Li Bu-er is indeed quite capable." The deputy hall master nodded. "But do you know, just a while ago, the island master of the first island was assassinated at the bottom of the stone stairs." Yi Zhong sighed. "What?" The deputy hall master was shocked and asked, "Who is it?" "I don't know. This person's speed was very fast. When I ran down, he had already disappeared and erased the remaining aura. But I suspect that it must be related to Li Bu-er, but I can't find any evidence." Yi Zhong's expression was filled with helplessness. The deputy hall master asked, "Li Bu-er went out?" Yi Zhong said, "It's because he didn't go out that I can't do anything to him." The deputy hall master frowned. "Then it might not be related to Li Bu-er. Isn't it obvious? He was assassinated just after a conflict. Who else could it be but him? And at that time in the Divine Art Treasury, he also said something to me." Yi Zhong frowned. "What?" The deputy hall master was suspicious. Yi Zhong said, "He said that I will definitely regret it." The deputy hall master was stunned. He shook his head and laughed. "He even dares to threaten you. This kid is quite interesting." "You're still laughing? Do you know that I feel extremely embarrassed right now? I was actually fooled by a little brat." Yi Zhong snorted angrily and said, "Go to the Nine Heavens Realms examination place now." "Why are you going there?" The deputy hall master was suspicious. "Don't ask first. Let's see if there are any divine artifacts and divine arts there. As soon as possible." Yi Zhong said. "Okay." The deputy hall master nodded and turned around to leave the Dragon God Palace. "The two young people recruited this time are not simple," Yi Zhong murmured. Thinking of that listless but ridiculously strong young man, he couldn't help but have a headache. And now there was another troublesome person. It seemed that he would be busy in the future. 2 days later, the deputy hall master finally came out of the examination place with a face full of disbelief. Without stopping, he returned to the Dragon God Palace. Yi Zhong opened his eyes and asked, "How was it?" "That's strange. I turned the examination place upside down, but I couldn't find a single divine art or divine artifact," the deputy hall master said. Yi Zhong's expression stiffened and then said with a wry smile, "There's no need to think. It must be the work of Li Bu-er and that young man." The deputy hall master looked at Yi Zhong suspiciously. When Li Bu-er killed Wang Darren and the other two, he used the Fire Thunder Divine Art and Wisdom King Golden Body. But at that time, I didn't see it with my own eyes, so I wasn't sure. That's why I asked you to go to the examination place. Yi Zhong sighed. The deputy hall master nodded and said speechlessly, "They didn't leave a single divine artifact. These two guys are a bit crazy. I'm afraid they did it on purpose." Yi Zhong shook his head and said, "From now on, you'll be stationed on the first island and secretly monitor Li Bu-er's movements." "What about that young man?" the deputy hall master asked. "Let's not worry about him first. I have a hunch that what he said about making me regret is definitely not just that." Yi Zhong said. "Okay." The deputy hall master nodded and flew to the first island. In the ancient castle, 2 days outside, 200 years had passed inside. Both Qin Feiyang and the big black wolf had mastered the Qilin skill and the serious demonic book. However, a year had passed in the ancient castle, but the artifact spirits of the 4 divine artifacts still showed no signs of waking up. This made Qin Feiyang suspicious. Were the artifact spirits pretending to be asleep and looking for a chance to escape the ancient castle? But after observing for a while, he found nothing. Qin Feiyang was really impatient. He turned to Fire Lotus and stretched out his hand. "Give me the axe." Fire Lotus took out the axe and handed it to Qin Feiyang. Qin Feiyang grabbed the axe and looked at the 4 divine artifacts. Whether they were pretending or not, he would know with a try. Clang! Immediately, Qin Feiyang then raised his axe and chopped towards the 4 heaven-defying divine artifacts. Clang! In the next moment, the 4 heaven-defying artifacts unleashed a terrifying aura. They are indeed pretending. Qin Feiyang's heart trembled. Fire Lotus hurriedly rushed to Qin Feiyang's side and looked at the 4 divine artifacts vigilantly. If these 4 divine artifacts were to awaken in the ancient castle, not only would it bring them a disaster, even the creatures of the Black Tortoise realm would be affected. Qin Feiyang suddenly waved his hand, and the ancient castle's gate closed. Then, Qin Feiyang returned the axe to Fire Lotus, looked at the 4 divine artifacts, and said indifferently, "You are quite cunning." The 4 heaven-defying divine artifacts remained silent. "You have all fought with the ancient castle, and know its strength. Even if you fight it head-on, you are not its opponent, not to mention now, you are in its internal space. So let me give you a piece of advice. Don't do anything stupid," Qin Feiyang said. Fire Lotus suddenly understood. The 4 divine artifacts still didn't know that the ancient castle had been sealed by the small beast, so they would definitely be afraid of the ancient castle. Was Qin Dage not nervous? Perhaps. He was also nervous, but he couldn't show it, because once he showed it, the 4 divine artifacts would be suspicious. On the contrary, as long as he remained calm and collected, he would be able to intimidate the 4 heaven-defying divine artifacts. "Don't do anything stupid? Qin Feiyang, don't scare us. Do you think we don't know that your ancient castle has been sealed by a small beast?" A voice suddenly sounded, coming from the Sunset Bow. It was obviously the Sunset Bow's spirit. And Qin Feiyang was stunned. Fire Lotus also had a look of surprise. How did they know? During this period of time, no one seemed to have mentioned this matter? Oh no. Suddenly, Fire Lotus slapped her head. What? Qin Feiyang looked at Fire Lotus suspiciously. It seems that one day, when the 3 Black Panther brothers were chatting with me, I told them about the ancient castle being sealed. Could it be that you heard it at that time? Fire Lotus looked at the 4 divine artifacts and asked. That's right. At that time we had already awakened. The Sunset Bow's spirit said. Fire Lotus immediately looked at Qin Feiyang and blamed herself. Qin Dage, I'm sorry. It's okay. Qin Feiyang waved his hand, looked at the 4 divine artifacts and asked. Then why didn't you take the opportunity to make a move? The Sunset Bow's spirit fell silent. Then let me guess. On one hand, you should be afraid of my slaughter domain, because you have suffered a great loss under my slaughter domain more than once. But I think that just the slaughter domain alone shouldn't be enough to make you so afraid, because if you completely unlock the seal, then you have the ability to shatter the Black Tortoise realm and escape before I open the slaughter domain. You can even kill us. But you didn't do that, and have been hiding in the ancient castle. Then I'll boldly guess the second reason. After these few battles, you might be wondering whether following the dragons was right or wrong. So you decided to stay in the ancient castle and secretly observe us. Of course, this is only my personal guess. Is that the case? I still need you to answer it for me. Qin Feiyang looked at the 4 divine artifacts and said. After a moment of silence, the Sunset Bow's spirit suddenly said. To be able to guess this, as the ancient castle spirit said, you are indeed an amazing person. What? The ancient castle spirit. You communicated with it? Qin Feiyang was surprised. Chapter 2481. Fire Lotus was also extremely shocked. The ancient castle's weapon spirit had always been a mysterious existence. According to the time in the ancient castle, she had stayed in the ancient castle for at least hundreds of thousands of years. But in these hundreds of thousands of years, she had never communicated with the ancient castle's weapon spirit even once. Don't talk about her. Even Qin Feiyang had never said a word to the weapon spirit. But the weapon spirit of the Sunset Bow told them that the ancient castle's weapon spirit had communicated with them? How unbelievable was this? Your reactions have exceeded this sovereign's expectations. It seems that the ancient castle's weapon spirit has never communicated with you. The weapon spirit of the Sunset Bow said. What did it say to you? Where is it now? Qin Feiyang asked. All these years, he had wondered more than once if the ancient castle really had a weapon spirit. But how could such a powerful divine artifact not have a weapon spirit? So, this matter could be considered a knot in his heart. Now that he heard the weapon spirit of the sunset bao say this, he really wanted to know. The weapon spirit of the sunset bao hesitated for a moment before saying, "Let it tell you itself in the future." Qin Feiyang raised his eyebrows. The weapon spirit of the sunset bao said, "Don't blame me. This is what the ancient castle's weapon spirit just told me." Qin Feiyang was startled. "Just now, it communicated with you again?" "Yes." The weapon spirit of the sunset bao replied. Qin Feiyang was extremely depressed. He was standing face to face with the 4 heaven-defying divine artifacts. Why didn't they communicate with him? "All right." Qin Feiyang sighed helplessly and asked, "What did he say to you?" "He said that you are a human worthy of our pursuit, and asked us to consider it carefully. So we pretended to be asleep and secretly observed you." The weapon spirit of the sunset bao said. "The ancient castle," Qin Feiyang muttered. No matter where he went, the ancient castle was the one that cared about him the most. When encountering difficulties, the ancient castle would not hesitate to raise its level. It could be said that, in this lifetime, he owed the ancient castle too much, and he couldn't repay it all. Qin Feiyang asked, "What have you observed?" "I have my principles. You're good to people too. You're very calm in handling things. He's also very meticulous. His talent is also 1 in a million. To be honest, it's not bad, but it also has some fatal flaws." Sunset Divine Bao said. "What flaw?" Qin Feiyang was suspicious. "First of all, you place too much importance on relationships. This will become a huge burden. Secondly, you are too young and your cultivation is too weak. Although there are many powerful methods, you must know that on the path of cultivation, one's own cultivation is actually the foundation." The artifact spirit of the sunset divine Bao said. "I know." Qin Feiyang nodded. After pondering for a while, he said with a faint smile, "Actually, what you said is not a flaw." "No." The artifact spirit was taken aback. "Yes. Although you are all heaven-defying artifacts and have the instinct to destroy the world, there are many things about humans that you don't understand. It is because you are too strong and have the strength to crush everything that these things are dispensable in your eyes. But humans are different. Humans are just born as babies. They don't know anything and don't have the strength to trust a chicken. It's your parents, your family, who protect you as you grow up. It is also their selfless contribution and hard work that you can gradually understand this world. When you grow up, you will have brothers, friends, and lovers. Everyone gathers together to face the unknown together, to overcome difficulties together, and to move forward together. So, whether it is the love of family, relatives, brothers, friends, or lovers, these are all part of feelings. And these feelings are like a line that connects everyone together. For example, Fire Lotus and I, although we are not related by blood, although she is stronger than me, we are like siblings. Another example is the white-eyed wolf and I. It is not only a beast but also a wolf. Wolves are feared by everyone because in the world's impression, wolves are a cold-blooded and ferocious creature. But it and I are like brothers. Why is that? This is love, this is loyalty. There is also me, Gu Bao, Chang Shui, Lu Hong, Zhao Tailai, and the others. There are too many I can't even finish talking. Isn't it because of friendship that we are able to come to this day? Since friendship has connected us and made us the most important thing in each other's lives, why should we give it up? No, this friendship should be cherished more. Because it is the most precious thing in life. No treasure or money can exchange for it. Qin Feiyang said slowly. As he finished speaking, a brilliant smile appeared on his face. He was a lucky man, because in this life, he had met too many people and beasts who cared about him. And he also cared about them. The artifact spirit of the sunset Bao fell silent. Let me put it this way. If it wasn't for friendship, I wouldn't have so many people around me. After Qin Feiyang finished speaking, he looked at the fire lotus next to him. If it wasn't for friendship, no one would stand in front of me and block the enemy's attack for me when I was in danger. Qin Feiyang looked at the big black wolf next to him. If it wasn't for friendship, I don't know how many times I would have died. So I, Qin Feiyang, would rather give up all the treasures and resources I have now than give up them and them. Qin Feiyang said. They of course referred to the fire lotus Zhao Tailai and the mermaid princess. And they of course referred to the white-eyed wolf, the big black wolf, Yu Huang and so on. The artifact spirits of the 4 heaven-defying artifacts were silent. As for the cultivation you mentioned, I admit that my current cultivation is indeed very weak. But in this world, who didn't start weak and gradually become strong? For example, Longzuan. Was she born so strong? If Longzuan can reach this level, why can't I, Qin Feiyang, do the same? It's only a matter of time. I'm not afraid to tell you that Longzuan is no longer my target. Qin Feiyang said confidently. The artifact spirit of the sunset Bao asked. Then who is your target? The god of creation Wuxian. Qin Feiyang paused after every word, his eyes filled with incomparable determination. The god of creation. Hearing these 3 words, the 4 heaven-defying artifacts couldn't help but tremble, as if they were afraid. I believe that in this world, no one would dare to have any thoughts about the god of creation, including you. Perhaps in your eyes, I'm overestimating myself, but if you're not willing to work hard, how will you know if you can do it? After saying so much, I actually just want to express one thing. If you follow Longzuan, you can only struggle in the ancient world forever, and you won't even have the chance to see the sky outside. But if you follow me, perhaps I can bring you out of this cage. Although the chances are slim, there's always hope. Qin Feiyang said. The artifact spirit of the sunset Bao said. This sovereign is very curious. Where do you get such confidence? Confidence comes from myself. You don't need to ask for it from anyone. As long as you have confidence in yourself, anything is possible. Qin Feiyang smiled. The artifact spirit of the sunset Bao fell silent again. As for the artifact spirits of the other 3 heaven-defying artifacts, they didn't say a word from beginning to end. It was as if the artifact spirit of the sunset Bao was their representative. Actually, it's not hard to think. Longzuan might be the strongest in the ancient world, but is she the master of the ancient world? She's not. As for the black tortoise world, although it's much weaker than the ancient world, I'm the master of the black tortoise world. The black tortoise world is also an independent world. Just based on this point alone, Longzuan can't compare to me. You don't need to express your stance now. Slowly observe. I believe that one day in the future, you'll choose to stand with me. Qin Feiyang smiled faintly. If it were any other young man, this sovereign would definitely say that he's conceited. But you, to be honest, this sovereign doesn't dare to say that. Because we've seen too many miracles from you. All right, as you said, we'll stay here and continue to observe you. The artifact spirit of the sunset, Bao pondered for a while and said. Qin Feiyang smiled. You can stay here as long as you want. The fact that the 4 heaven-defying artifacts chose to stay meant that they were interested in him. After saying so much, it wasn't a waste of time. In the future, when he completely convinced the 4 heaven-defying artifacts to join his side, his strength would instantly skyrocket countless times. And as long as the 4 heaven-defying artifacts stayed, it was basically a done deal. Fire Lotus had a hint of a smile in her eyes as she said, Then did Longzuan bind you guys with blood? Although these heaven-defying artifacts were in the hands of the ancestral dragons, the true master was definitely Longzuan. Therefore, even if they were to bind, it would be Longzuan, and not the ancestral dragons. Bind with blood? You must be joking. For artifacts of our level, who has the right to be our master? Even if it's Longzuan, he has to lower his status in front of us. Let's talk about it later. With our abilities, even if we bind with blood, we can directly erase the blood contract ourselves. The artifact spirit of the sunset Bao said domineeringly. What? You can erase the blood contract yourselves? Qin Feiyang was shocked. Of course. Therefore, basically, no one can control us. The artifact spirit of the sunset Bao said. Qin Feiyang frowned. Then, wouldn't it be meaningless to bind with blood on the Grey Castle back then? The artifact spirit of the sunset Bao suddenly said. Since you're staying here, then I'll give you a piece of news. Qin Feiyang was slightly taken aback. Looking at the sunset Bao, he asked suspiciously, What news? The artifact spirit of the sunset Bao said. This news may be a blow to you. Speak. The thing I'm least afraid of is a blow. Qin Feiyang smiled. The 4 ancestral dragons, the Dragon Princess, the Black Dragons, the Dragon God Palace Master, including the Black Dragon's 10th elder that you guys killed in the past, none of them will die. The artifact spirit of the sunset Bao said. What? Qin Feiyang was taken aback. His face was immediately filled with bewilderment. Chapter 2482. Not dead. Beside him, Huolian and Big Black Wolf were also stunned. The bodies of the 4 ancestral dragons and the black dragons were still in the castle. How could they not be dead? And the princess of the dragons was also destroyed. Even the 10th elder of the Black Dragon clan had his divine soul turned to ashes. Qin Feiyang had seen all this with his own eyes. And now he was telling him that they weren't dead. How was that possible? Was this a joke? The Sunset Divine Bao said. I'm not joking with you. They really aren't dead. That's impossible. Qin Feiyang shook his head. The Sunset Divine Bao said. I told you that you couldn't take this blow, but you didn't believe me. Qin Feiyang frowned and said. But what you said is too unbelievable. Do you know why Feng Daji left a wisp of his divine soul before he self-destructed? He learned it from the dragons. Ever since the rise of the Dragon Slayer Palace, any half-step imperishable divine dragon or above would split a wisp of their divine soul and place it in the Dragon Slayer Forbidden Land. This is to prevent them from dying in the process of fighting the Dragon Slayer Palace. The Sunset Divine Bao said. Split a wisp of their divine soul. Qin Feiyang's eyes trembled. So the 4 ancestral dragons were really not dead. As long as a wisp of their divine soul exists, they won't die. They just need to spend some time to reassemble their divine souls. The Sunset Divine Bao said. Qin Feiyang said in a deep voice. Are you sure you're not joking with us? Is there a need to joke with you? The Sunset Divine Bao said. Not dead. After so much effort, none of them died. Qin Feiyang murmured. This result was too hard to accept. Qin Dage. Big Brother. Fire Lotus and Big Black Wolf looked at Qin Feiyang worriedly. Having followed Qin Feiyang every day, they naturally knew Qin Feiyang better than anyone else. In order to kill the 4 ancestor dragons, Qin Feiyang had made too many preparations. He had thought that the matter had been completely resolved, and he had revealed a victorious smile. But suddenly, someone told him that no one had died. He had worked hard for nothing. No one would be able to withstand such a blow. Sigh. The artifact spirit of the Sunset Divine Bao sighed and fell silent. Qin Dage, it doesn't matter. At worst, I'll just kill them again in the future. Fire Lotus whispered. That's right, Big Brother. You have to be strong. It's just a small matter. It's not worth taking it to heart. The Big Black Wolf was also trying to persuade him. Who? Qin Feiyang took a deep breath and looked at the man and the wolf. He smiled and said, Look at how anxious you are. Am I that weak? But just now, Fire Lotus and Big Black Wolf looked at him. It's just too sudden. It's hard to accept. Besides, this isn't a waste of effort. Qin Feiyang said, and looked at the 4 heaven-defying legendary weapons. Although they didn't die, they still profited greatly, because they obtained the 4 heaven-defying legendary weapons. Although the 4 heaven-defying legendary weapons hadn't made a clear statement yet, they already had that intention. Therefore, no matter what, the dragons were the ones who lost out this time. And he had gained a huge advantage. Fire Lotus and Big Black Wolf looked at the 4 heaven-defying legendary weapons, and then at Qin Feiyang. Seeing that Qin Feiyang didn't seem to be affected, they heaved a sigh of relief. Qin Feiyang smiled. Seems like in the future, unless it's absolutely necessary, we should avoid fighting with them. Indeed. They can revive after killing them. There's no point in fighting with them. Fire Lotus nodded. Alright, you guys go do what you need to do. I'll go into seclusion first. Qin Feiyang faintly smiled, then turned around and entered the cultivation room. There was no need to keep an eye on the 4 heaven-defying legendary weapons. Bang! At this moment, a powerful aura descended above the valley. Qin Feiyang was startled. Li Buer, are you there? A hoarse voice was heard. This voice sounds familiar. Qin Feiyang mumbled and left the ancient castle. When he walked out of the cave, he saw an old man with white hair and a sage-like demeanor standing outside. You are? Qin Feiyong looked at the old man suspiciously. You've forgotten me already? I was the one who sent you to the first island. The old man smiled. You? After being reminded by the old man, Qin Feiyong immediately remembered and said, You're the vice leader of the disciplinary hall. Yes. The vice leader nodded. Qin Feiyong asked, Is there anything you need from me? Let me introduce myself. My name is Yi Cheng, and I'm the acting island master of the first island. I'm here to ask for the jade box that you took from the treasury 2 days ago. Ask for it. Qin Feiyong raised his eyebrows. There was a reason for him to ask for it back. Vice leader, that's not right. We chose the divine arts ourselves. We also walked into the deity technique treasury openly. You can't ask us to return the supreme divine arts and legendary divine arts just because you saw us pick them. What's the difference between this and the actions of a villain? Qin Feiyong said. What? Yi Cheng was slightly stunned and said in surprise. You picked the supreme divine arts and legendary divine arts. You don't know? This time, it was Qin Feiyong who was stunned. You picked the divine arts, and you didn't open it at that time. No one saw it. How would I know what level it was? Yi Cheng was speechless. Then why are you here to ask for it back? Qin Feiyong frowned. Yi Cheng was startled and said with a wry smile. It seems like you've misunderstood. I'm here to ask for the jade box, not the divine arts, because the jade box is made of special materials. It's very precious. I see. Qin Feiyong came to a realization. It was indeed a misunderstanding. Speaking of which, if I didn't come here, I wouldn't know you found the supreme divine arts and legendary divine arts. It's the first time you and the big black wolf entered the treasury, right? Yi Cheng asked. Yeah. Qin Feiyong nodded. You found the divine arts on your first try. You're as lucky as Gu Fan from 1,000 years ago. Gu Fan also found the supreme divine arts on his first try. It was quite an uproar back then. Yi Cheng said in disbelief. It's just luck. Qin Feiyong smiled awkwardly. It would be exposed sooner or later, so it did not matter if he said it out loud. Yi Cheng asked curiously, What's the name of your divine arts? Qilin Technique Serious Demonic Book. Qin Feiyong said and secretly sent a message to the big black wolf, asking him to give the jade box to him. Qilin Technique Serious Demonic Book? I've heard Big Brother mention these 2 divine arts before. Qilin Technique is indeed a supreme divine art. The Serious Demonic Book is tailor-made for wolves. You and the big black wolf are even luckier than Gu Fan to be able to find divine arts that suit you so well. Yi Cheng exclaimed. It's a blessing from the heavens. Qin Feiyong smiled and took out the big black wolf's jade box. He also took out his own jade box from his universe ring. After that, he stepped forward and handed the 2 jade boxes to Yi Cheng. Yi Cheng put away the jade boxes and smiled. Luck is only part of it. You have to work hard for everything. Thank you for your guidance, Deputy Palace Master. Qin Feiyong bowed. He had a good impression of this old man. Whether it was the last time he sent everyone to the first island or this time, he did not put on any airs and was amiable. All right then. I'll go back to the duty hall first. If you have any difficulties, you can come to the duty hall to find me. Yi Cheng said. Okay. Qin Feiyong nodded. Yi Cheng smiled and turned to leave. Qin Feiyong watched Yi Cheng leave and was about to return to his cave residence. But at this moment, Hui flew out from the side of the valley. It was still Chao Deyuan. Qin Feiyong was stunned and said, When did you come back? Just now. I saw you talking to Yi Cheng just now, so I hid behind you. Hui said casually and then warned, You have to be careful of this Yi Cheng. Why? Qin Feiyong was suspicious. Hui said, He's Yi Zhong's younger brother. Yi Zhong's younger brother? Qin Feiyong was stunned. This was really unexpected. One is called Yi Zhong, and the other is called Yi Cheng. It's obvious. Hui pursed his lips. There are people with the same name and surname in the world, let alone just having the same surname. Who would think so much? Qin Feiyong was speechless. Anyway, you just have to be careful. Yi Zhong must have a purpose for letting him come to the first island. But the names of these 2 brothers are really funny. One is loyal, the other is sincere. But their loyalty is to the dragons. Hui sneered. Everyone has their own ambitions. Since you're back, I have some bad news for you, Qin Feiyang said. What bad news? Hui was stunned. The 4 ancestral dragons were dead, and the dragon's princess was also gone. What bad news could there be? Qin Feiyang said. The dragon's princess and the others are not dead. What? Hui raised his head and said, Say it again. They're not dead. Qin Feiyang briefly explained the situation. There's such a thing. Your sister. Isn't this playing with us? Hui was also indignant. But at the same time, there's also good news. Qin Feiyang explained the situation of the 4 heaven-defying divine artifacts. Fortunately, it's not too bad. Hui breathed a sigh of relief. As long as the 4 heaven-defying divine artifacts were left behind, the problem would not be too big. He was just afraid that the 4 heaven-defying divine artifacts would also slip away. Then it would really be a waste of effort. Qin Feiyang smiled and said, I also got a supreme divine art. I heard it just now. You and that wolf cub are really lucky. Hui's face was full of envy. Qin Feiyang asked, Then where have you been fooling around these days? The medicinal field. Originally, I wanted to see if there was a chance to rob them, but the person guarding the medicinal field never left. Hui said angrily, This matter can't be rushed. We have to take it slowly. Let's go. If there's nothing else, let's give the 4 heaven-defying divine artifacts more thought. Maybe in a few days they'll agree to follow us. Qin Feiyang smiled inwardly, and then took Hui to the ancient castle. What did you say? They got the Qilin technique and the serious demonic tome. In the square, Yi Zhong suddenly stood up and looked at Yi Cheng's shadow. His eyes almost popped out. Yes. Yi Cheng sat in the duty hall and nodded. Back then, Gu Fan also got a supreme divine art. And the 2 of them, in addition to a supreme divine art, they also got a legendary divine art. Their luck is too heaven-defying. Yi Zhong was speechless, counting the divine artifacts and divine arts in the examination ground. This kid had taken a big advantage of the Dragon God Palace. Yi Cheng said, Then should we ask Li Buer for it? Ask. Yi Zhong was stunned. If he's loyal to the dragons like Gu Fan, not only will we give it to him, but we'll also focus on nurturing him. But this Li Buer, big brother, to be honest, this Li Buer has no respect for the dragons, let alone loyalty. He might even become our enemy in the future. Yi Cheng said. This matter. Yi Zhong pondered for a while and said, Asking for it will damage the reputation of the Dragon God Palace. This matter can't be taken lightly. I'll ask Longzuan first and see what she thinks. Okay. Yi Cheng nodded and the shadow disappeared. Chapter 2483. Yi Zhong stood in the square and pondered for a while before activating the image crystal. Buzz. Soon, a blurry figure appeared. Longzun. Yi Zhong bowed. What's the matter? Longzun asked. Yi Zhong briefly explained the situation. Li Buer. Longzun pondered for a while and said, Go back and see the young man's reaction. Okay. Yi Zhong nodded. After following Longzun for so long, he naturally knew Longzun very well. In fact, the latter sentence was the main point. The most important thing was to see the young man's attitude. Was there a relationship between the 2 of them? After turning off the image crystal, Yi Zhong sent a message to Yi Cheng and gave him a few instructions. Early the next morning, whoosh, a young man descended in the sky above the valley. This person was 7 meters tall and had a thin body. His hands were behind his back, and he was at the 9th heaven greater success stage. He looked extremely arrogant. Glancing at the cave abode in the valley, the young man landed in front of the cave abode. Buzz! A light screen appeared and sealed the door of the cave abode. There's a barrier. The young man was stunned. He raised his head and waved his hand, causing the light screen to disintegrate. In the ancient castle, Qin Feiyang, who was sitting in the cultivation room, trembled slightly, and a trace of blood dripped from the corner of his mouth. Right then, he suddenly opened his eyes and 2 cold lights shot out. Someone had barged into the cave abode. Whoosh! The next moment, he disappeared from the cultivation room. Cave abode. The young man stood in the middle and scanned the surroundings. After being in the Dragon God Palace for so many years, this was the first time he saw such a simple cave abode. He had never seen anyone lazier than this. But where was this person? Why didn't he see him? He was about to release his divine consciousness when Qin Feiyang appeared at this moment. Who are you? Qin Feiyang raised his eyebrows. You're Li Bua? The young man asked instead of answering. Qin Feiyang said, It seems like I'm the one asking you. Barging into his cave early in the morning with such an arrogant attitude. He must be crazy. The young man said proudly, Yuda enforcer. Qin Feiyang raised his eyebrows and said, Can law enforcers break into other people's cave residence for no reason? What attitude? Do you know who you are talking to? Not only do the enforcers have the right to enter your cave residence, they also have the right to punish you. What's more, is this a cave abode? I think it's just a dog kennel. Yuda sneered. Doghouse. Qin Feiyang murmured as a cold light flashed in his eyes. No. But then, Qin Feiyang looked at Yuda strangely. Was there really something wrong with this person's brain? Right now, everyone in the Dragon God Palace knew that he had a supreme expert protecting him. Even the island master, and Yi Cheng had to be polite to him. However, not only did this person directly barge into the cave, he even displayed an arrogant and despotic attitude. Where did his confidence come from? Yuda frowned and said, Greetings, law enforcers, why aren't you bowing? Bow. Qin Feiyang was stunned. He was completely speechless. It seemed that there was really something wrong with this person's brain. Qin Feiyang's eyes flashed with a hint of ridicule as he cupped his hands and said, Greetings, law enforcers. May I ask why you have barged into the cave residence? That's more like it. Yuda looked at him proudly and asked, Where's that big black dog beside you? It's cultivating. Qin Feiyang said. Let it out as well. Yuda said expressionlessly. Qin Feiyang shook his head and said, If you have something to say, then say it quickly. Impudent. If I tell you to call it out, then call it out. What nonsense are you talking about? Yuda shouted. Good. Please wait a moment. Qin Feiyang nodded and said, Hui, change your appearance. All right. Soon. Hui's voice sounded in his mind. Qin Feiyang's eyes flashed with a hint of ridicule. With a wave of his hand, Hui appeared. But it was still Chao De Yuan's appearance. Yuda looked at Hui, then looked at Qin Feiyang, and immediately said angrily, I told you to call that beast out. Why did you call a person out? Qin Feiyang sighed and said, Shut him up. Hui grinned, stepped forward, grabbed Yuda's neck, and immediately greeted him with a few slaps. Pa! The crisp sound of the slaps echoed in the narrow cave residence for a long time. Yuda was dumbfounded. He actually dared to hit a law enforcer? What shocked him the most was that this person's strength seemed to be stronger than his. Being grabbed by the neck, he couldn't break free. Bang! After a few slaps, Hui threw Yuda to the ground with a smile on his face. You! Yuda looked at Qin Feiyang and Hui in shock and anger. What about us? Qin Feiyang said with a playful smile. Yuda roared. Hitting a law enforcer is a capital offense. Capital offense? How do you spell this word? Can you teach us? Hui said. Yuda looked at the two in a daze. They weren't afraid at all? What was going on? Which person from the Dragon God Palace didn't look at the law enforcers as if they had seen a ghost? Hui looked at Yuda and asked, Are you sure you're a law enforcer of the Dragon God Palace? Nonsense. Yuda got up and angrily glared at the two. Hui said, So, you should have been in seclusion all this time and only came out today. How did you know? Yuda was shocked. He even knew that he had only come out today. Sure enough. Hui shook his head and smiled. If he wasn't in seclusion, how could he not know about Qin Feiyang? If he knew, why would he be so arrogant? Yuda looked at Qin Feiyang and Hui in shock. What the hell is going on? When did the disciples of the Dragon God Palace become so arrogant? Those who don't know won't be blamed. Say it, what do you want? Hui said. Still won't be blamed? Yuda was very depressed. Who was the law enforcer here? Say it. Hui looked at him impatiently. Yuda looked at Hui, and a sense of fear emerged in his heart. Under the orders from above, I'm here to take back the Qilin technique and serious demonic book. What? Qin Feiyang raised his eyebrows. Take back the Qilin technique in serious demonic book? He never thought that this person would come with such a purpose. Whose order? Huai asked. From above. Yuda said. Huai frowned. There must be someone above. Who is this person? It's... Yuda's face was a little embarrassed. It should be Yi Zhong. No. If it's Yi Zhong, he wouldn't have let you come. I think this person must be Yi Cheng. He doesn't dare to come himself, so he asked you to sound me out first. Qin Feiyang said. This, Yuda didn't know how to answer. It was indeed Yi Cheng who asked him to come, but he really didn't know what was going on. What was going on? Why would the deputy palace master ask him to sound him out? Could it be that even the deputy palace master was afraid of these people? But the deputy palace master also had a backer. And this backer was Yi Zhong, the chief palace master. With the support of the chief palace master, what was there for the deputy palace master to be afraid of? Yuda vaguely realized that this matter was probably not so simple, and he might really be cannon fodder. Qin Feiyang said indifferently. Go back and tell Yi Cheng that I won't return it to him. Are you sure? Yuda was stunned and instinctively asked. Get lost. Qin Feiyang shouted. Yuda's body trembled, and he immediately turned around and ran out as if he was running for his life. Huai retracted his gaze and turned to look at Qin Feiyang frowning. What's going on? You actually want to take back the Qilin incantation and serious demonic book? Does the dragon god have such a rule that you can take it back whenever you want? I don't know. Qin Feiyang shook his head. Why don't I go out and ask around? If there is such a rule, it's fine. But if there is no such rule, then they are deliberately targeting us. Huai said. All right. Qin Feiyang nodded. Huai immediately rushed out. Qin Feiyang frowned. Yesterday, when Yi Cheng came, he misunderstood Yi Cheng's words at first, and Yi Cheng personally explained it. Why did he ask for the Qilin incantation and serious demonic book today? Yi Cheng, Yi Zhong, this matter should not only be related to these two brothers, but also to the dragons. You don't like me that much? Qin Feiyang smiled coldly. Originally, Yi Cheng gave him a good impression, but who would have thought that he was a two-faced villain? It was no wonder. After all, he was Yi Zhong's younger brother. How good could he be? When Qin Feiyang returned to the castle, the big black wolf immediately ran to Qin Feiyang's side and said, Brother, I won't return the serious demonic book to them even if you beat me to death. Don't worry. You want to take back something that is already in our hands? In your dreams. Qin Feiyang sneered. In the duty hall. What's wrong with your face? Yi Cheng sat at the tea table in the hall and looked at Yuda, who was standing opposite him in shock. I was beaten up by Li Bu'er and his accomplices. Yuda said aggrievedly. Yi Cheng was stunned. This kid was indeed not easy to deal with. Fortunately, he had been careful and did not run over in person, or he might be the one being slapped now. Deputy Lord, although I am afraid of offending you, I still have to say that you are in the wrong. Yuda said. Yi Cheng looked a little embarrassed. He coughed dryly and said, Didn't I tell you to be polite to him? But you didn't say that he has someone protecting him. If you didn't make it clear, why should I be polite to him? After all, I am a law enforcer. Yuda lowered his head and felt wronged. Even if I didn't say it, don't you know to ask around before you go? As a law enforcer, don't you know the principle of collecting information and knowing your enemy? Besides, you have been in seclusion for so long. Shouldn't you ask around about what happened recently as soon as you come out? In the end, you are too careless. Yi Cheng said with a straight face. Yes, you are right. Yuda nodded repeatedly. He was truly suffering in silence, not daring to voice out his bitterness. Yi Cheng chuckled and asked, What did Li Bu'er say? He asked me to tell you that it is impossible. Yuda said. This kid's courage is indeed admirable, but he neglected a fatal weakness. His divine soul is under the control of the divine stone of fate. It's too easy to kill him. Yi Cheng smiled faintly. Yuda said, Then just kill him. How can we keep such an arrogant person alive for the new year? Some things are not as simple as you think. In the future, you will stay here and help me manage the first island. At the same time, you can also find out about Li Bu'er's situation. It will surprise you. After you recover from your injuries, you can go again and ask Li Bu'er to come to see me. Yi Qing said. Yes. Yu nodded. He really did not want to go to that place again. But he did not dare to disobey the deputy lord's order. No matter where it was always weak people like him who were injured. Chapter 2484. Half a day later, Hui finally returned. The news he brought back was that such a thing had never happened in the Dragon God Palace before. It was obvious that they were being deliberately targeted, the big black wolf said worriedly. Big brother, the strong dragon cannot suppress the local snake. What should we do? Qin Feiyang was silent for a long time, then said, Since they are heartless, then don't blame us for being unjust. Finished. Qin Feiyang turned to look at Fire Lotus and said, Give me some medicinal ingredients like the nirvana fruit, the more the better. Fire Lotus nodded, took out the universe ring, and began to organize it. Big brother, what do you want to do? The big black wolf looked at Qin Feiyang suspiciously. Qin Feiyang said, Since I said that I would make Yi Zhong regret it, then I must do it. Soon, Fire Lotus gave Qin Feiyang a Qinkuan bag. Inside there were thousands of nirvana fruit, thousands of nature fruit, and thousands of Mother Earth Chaos Divine Ginseng. Fire Lotus laughed. I still have a lot. You can take whatever you want. Haha. Qin Feiyang laughed, then brought the big black wolf, left the ancient castle, opened the teleportation altar, and headed straight for the assignment hall. Assignment hall. Yuda sat outside the door, his eyes filled with shock. Half a day was enough for him to find out everything. He was extremely shocked in his heart. He never thought that the person who entered the Dragon God Palace this time would be so terrifying. A chief palace master whose strength was comparable to Yi Zhong killed Long Chong on the same day and destroyed the body of the Dragon God Palace's hall master. The other one also had the protection of a supreme expert, who even killed the island master and massacred all the examinees. Even the second island master might have died at the hands of this person. Could it be that even the vice palace master was so fearful? Thinking about it, Yuda could not help but break out in cold sweat. Fortunately, he did not completely anger the other party at that time. Otherwise he might have already become a corpse. I still have to invite him over, my head hurts. Yuda rubbed his forehead, stood up and took out an altar. Why would the deputy palace master keep such a person on the first island? Let him wreak havoc on the second and third islands. However, just as Yuda helplessly activated the altar and prepared to head to the valley, a man and a wolf suddenly appeared in the sky above the square. Yuda was stunned. Wasn't this Li Bu'er? Could it be that they were holding a grudge because of what happened in the morning? And now they were here to look for trouble? Thinking of this, Yuda shuddered. He hurriedly put away the altar and ran back to the conference hall. He looked at Yi Cheng, who was sitting beside the tea table and taking a nap. On the tea table, there was a pot of boiling tea. The entire hall was filled with the aroma of tea. Deputy Palace Master Li Bu'er is here. Yuda's low shout immediately woke Yi Cheng up. He sat up and asked, Kill our way to the door? Are you sure? I'm not blind. How could I be wrong? Yuda said. What's the situation? You ran when you saw us. Qin Feiyang and the big black wolf had seen Yuda's previous reaction. They were both a little confused. Who cares? Let's go. Qin Feiyang shook his head and walked straight to the deacon hall with the big black wolf. At the same time, Yi Cheng walked to the door carefully and stuck his head out to look at Qin Feiyang and the big black wolf. There was no murderous intent. What are you talking about? Yi Cheng glared at Yuda and walked out from behind the door. He looked at Qin Feiyang and said with a smile, I knew that you're a reasonable person. Reasonable? Qin Feiyang was stunned. He looked down at the big black wolf and asked suspiciously, What do you mean? I don't know. The big black wolf shook his head. Yi Cheng walked up and sighed. Little brother. In fact, I was forced to do this. But now, you've personally delivered the jade slip. So that's what you're talking about. Qin Feiyang could not help but find it funny. Did this old man think that they were here to return the Qilin technique and serious fiend cannon? Little brother, please come in. I just brewed a pot of good tea. Let's chat while drinking tea. Yi Cheng welcomed them warmly. As long as they could return the Qilin technique and serious fiend cannon, everything was negotiable. This young man knew how to adapt to circumstances. Qin Feiyang walked into the hall and glanced at Yude beside him. He did not waste his breath and handed his universe bag to Yi Cheng. It's just 2 jade slips. There's no need to specially store them in a universe bag. Yi Cheng chuckled and took the universe bag. His expression froze when he opened it. He originally thought that there were jade slips for the Qilin technique and serious fiend cannon inside, but he did not expect that there was a huge pile of herbs inside. What was the meaning of this? Wait a minute. Was he trying to bribe him? Little brother, the Qilin technique and serious fiend cannon were ordered to be taken back by the higher-ups. The herbs you gave me are useless. You'd better take them back. After Yi Cheng finished speaking, he stuffed the universe bag back into Qin Feiyang's hands. Qin Feiyang was stunned. What was going on? Wait a minute. Did this old man think that he was going to bribe him with these herbs? The corner of Qin Feiyang's mouth twitched. Why was this old man's imagination always so rich? It made him a little embarrassed to fall out with him. Qin Feiyang coughed dryly and said, Deputy Hall Master, I'm using these herbs to exchange for merit points. Exchange for merit points? The Deputy Hall Master was stunned. This was awkward. He thought that he was here to bribe him. You'd count them. The Deputy Hall Master laughed dryly to hide his embarrassment. Yude immediately ran up, took the universe ring, squatted at the side and counted them. The Deputy Hall Master pointed to the seat next to him and said with a smile, Sit. Qin Feiyang said, I'm just a small disciple. I don't dare to sit on the same level as you, Deputy Hall Master. I'll just stand. There are no outsiders here. It's fine, the Deputy Hall Master said with a smile. Then I'll do as you say. Qin Feiyang smiled and sat at the tea table. The big black wolf stared at Yude counting the herbs, in case he did anything. The Deputy Hall Master sat opposite Qin Feiyang. He poured a cup of tea and pushed it in front of Qin Feiyang, saying with a smile, Try it. Qin Feiyang glanced at the Deputy Hall Master, picked up the teacup, put it to the tip of his nose and asked. The fragrance of the tea was quite ordinary. He tasted it again, and the taste was not very good. Of course, this was only for him. He was used to drinking good tea, so this kind of ordinary tea was not very attractive to him. To ordinary people, it was indeed a top-grade tea. How is it? The Deputy Hall Master looked at him expectantly. Not bad. Qin Feiyang nodded. I'm glad you like it. The Deputy Hall Master said with a smile. Qin Feiyang sized up Yi Cheng and didn't say anything else. He just silently drank his tea. The Deputy Hall Master was fine at first, but gradually he could not sit still and asked, Little brother, the Qilin incantation and the serious demonic book? You finally can't help it. Qin Feiyang secretly sneered and said suspiciously, Didn't I ask you to tell you? Didn't he tell you? Ahem. The Deputy Hall Master coughed and sighed. Actually, I know that it's very unfair for you to hand over the Qilin incantation and the serious demonic book, but this is not something I can decide. Qin Feiyang looked at him quietly. I won't hide it from you. Actually, the person who ordered the withdrawal of these 2 divine arts was Lord Longzuan. You also know that Lord Longzuan is the strongest person in the divine land. Even Grand Hall Master Yi Zhong does not dare to disobey her orders. The Deputy Hall Master said, Lord Longzuan. Qin Feiyang was shocked. It was actually Lord Longzuan who gave the order personally. Little brother, I also know that you have a half-step invincible realm expert by your side, but I believe that you also know the strength of the dragons. A half-step invincible realm expert is nothing in front of the dragons. The Deputy Hall Master advised earnestly. That's true. Qin Feiyang nodded. Since little brother knows this is the truth, why don't you be more straightforward? Grand Hall Master Yi Zhong also said that our Dragon God Hall can't let you suffer too much. So we are willing to give you 2 pinnacle divine arts as compensation, the Deputy Hall Master said. Qin Feiyang was happy to hear this and asked, Can pinnacle divine arts be compared with legendary and supreme divine arts? The Deputy Hall Master said with a smile. Of course not. But it's better than losing everything. Losing everything? Qin Feiyang was surprised and said, Deputy Hall Master, are you reminding me that if I don't hand over the Qilin art and serious demonic scripture, not only will I lose everything, I might not even be able to keep my life? Little brother is a smart person. I believe you can weigh the pros and cons. The Deputy Hall Master didn't answer directly, but the threat in his words could be heard clearly. Qin Feiyang said, Then I would like to ask, does the Dragon God Hall have such a rule? No. The Deputy Hall Master shook his head. Then isn't that right? Since there is no such rule, why should I return it to you? I didn't steal or rob. I took it out of the treasury openly. No matter how strong the dragons are, you still have to be reasonable. Qin Feiyang said, If there must be a rule before you are willing to take it out, then let this old man tell you. This rule is in place from now on. The Deputy Hall Master said, Haha. In such a big Dragon God Hall, you can change the rules just like that? Deputy Hall Master, you are too childish. Moreover, you don't seem to have the qualifications. Qin Feiyang laughed. You finally revealed your true face. Sure enough, you are a sanctimonious villain. Li Bu'er, this old man is already very polite to you. Don't be too greedy. Although this old man indeed doesn't have the qualifications, as long as this old man says a word, Chief Hall Master Yi Zhong will immediately set this rule. The Deputy Hall Master snorted. Of course. After all, you are blood brothers. And Yi Zhong is also the founder of the Dragon God Hall. He has the final say in the rules. But you two brothers working so hard for the dragons, aren't you afraid of going down in history? Qin Feiyang joked. The Deputy Hall Master's face sank slightly. Yuda, who was counting the medicinal herbs, was also shocked when he heard Qin Feiyang's words. He actually dared to say such disgraceful words in the Dragon God Hall. Was this person really not afraid of death? Hurry up. The big black wolf urged. Yuda glanced at the big black wolf. A cold light flashed in his eyes, and continued to count the medicinal herbs. Chapter 2485. The atmosphere in the hall was a little heavy. Yi Qing stared at Qin Feiyang with an ugly expression. As the Deputy Hall Master of the Tribunal Council, although he did not have much power, he still had status. Coupled with his relationship with Yi Zhong, no one dared to be impudent in front of him. This was the first time he had encountered such a situation. Qin Feiyang drank his tea and smiled without saying anything. As for Yi Qing's gaze, he chose to ignore it. Yi Zhong was indeed a terrifying existence, but Yi Qing was only at the peak 9 heavens realm. He was not a threat to him. Phew! Yi Qing suddenly exhaled and said with a faint smile. One has to consider the consequences when doing things. For example, the Divine Stone of Fate. This threat was even more obvious. The Divine Stone of Fate? Qin Feiyang was stunned. When he came back to his senses, he smiled. This old man still did not know that he had already broken the Divine Stone of Fate contract. Ignorance was really scary. Wait. Yi Qing was Yi Zhong's younger brother. In that case, wouldn't Yi Qing have a lot of value? As his brother, Yi Zhong would definitely not ignore Yi Qing's life and death. If he captured Yi Qing in his hands, or made Yi Qing surrender, and let Yi Qing persuade Yi Zhong, then would it be possible to make Yi Zhong abandon the dark side and join the light side? The Divine Stone of Fate is in the hands of Grand Hall Master Yi Zhong. If I send him a message now, what do you think the consequences will be? Yi Qing said with a faint smile as he drank his tea. Qin Feiyang smiled and said, Then why don't you guess what will happen later? Yi Qing was stunned and immediately raised his head, looking at Qin Feiyang in surprise. I'll kindly remind you that what I hate the most is being threatened, especially by the dragon's lackeys. Qin Feiyang smiled faintly. Crack. Yi Qing exerted a little force, and the teacup in his hand immediately shattered. The more he spoke, the more ridiculous and excessive it was. Did he really think that no one in the Dragon God Palace could subdue him? Yi Qing immediately took out the image crystal. Looks like I have to make a move. Qin Feiyang chuckled. With a thought, Hui appeared. Bang! As soon as Hui appeared, he waved his hand, and the hall's doors immediately closed. Yi Qing was shocked. Yuda's expression also changed abruptly. The big black wolf shouted, Don't stop, continue. Yes, yes, yes. Yuda nodded again and again. He looked at Hui, his face full of fear. Li Buer, are you going to offend me? Yi Cheng regained his senses and suddenly stood up. He stared at Qin Feiyang and shouted. Offending my superiors? That's not right. You're on? No, no, no. You've always been under my feet. How can you say that you're disobeying me? Qin Feiyang smiled. Yi Cheng's face sank. Hui sat beside Qin Feiyang. He crossed his arms over his chest as he looked at Yi Cheng. He jokingly said, Are you going to kneel down and surrender yourself? Or should I make you kneel down and beg for mercy? Submit. Yi Cheng's heart trembled. The two of them didn't plan to kill him, but to subdue him? Why was that? They even dared to kill the island master in public. It could be seen how bold these people were, so they would never show mercy for his big brother Yi Zhong. What was their purpose? Could it be that their entry into the Dragon God Palace was also a conspiracy? Thinking of this, Yi Cheng's scalp couldn't help but tingle. There weren't many people in the Divine Prefecture who dared to have designs on the Dragon God Palace. Suddenly, Yi Cheng took a big stride and rushed towards the door. But in this regard, Hui Yi's face was full of ridicule. With a wave of his hand, a divine barrier instantly appeared and enveloped the entire hall. Yi Cheng crashed into the barrier. Not only did he not break the barrier, but he was also bounced back. He was dizzy and in a sorry state. Deputy Palace Master. Yuda's pupil shrank as he looked at Qin Feiyang and Hui Yi. Suddenly, he glanced at the big black wolf on the side, and a trace of hostility flashed in his eyes. All of a sudden, he raised his arm and grabbed the big black wolf. And Qin Feiyang and Hui Yi turned their heads and looked at Yuda in astonishment. Yuda said in a deep voice, Immediately disperse the barrier, or I will kill this beast. Seeing this, the Deputy Palace Master was overjoyed and hurriedly rushed to Yuda's side and said, Well done. It is this little one's honor to be able to help the Deputy Palace Master. Yuda smiled flatteringly. Honor? I think you are naive. The big black wolf sneered. There was no tension at all, because it knew that with Hui Yi's cultivation, these two people couldn't make any waves at all. Shut up. Yuda glared at the big black wolf, then looked at Qin Feiyang and Hui Yi and urged, Hurry up. The two smiled and didn't speak. Yuda was originally full of confidence, but looking at the two's expressions, he couldn't help but feel guilty. Yi Cheng was also a little nervous, because Qin Feiyang and Hui Yi were too calm. Wait. Why do I feel that you look familiar? The Deputy Palace Master suddenly stared at Hui Yi. Yuda said, Sir, I just asked around. His name is Chao Diyuan, and it is said that he is only a supreme god. Supreme god? Yi Cheng was slightly taken aback and frowned. Can a supreme god hurt you? Yuda said. So he must be hiding his cultivation. Yi Cheng raised his head to look at the two of them and shouted, What is your purpose in coming to the Dragon God Palace? Quite smart. You actually guessed that we came to the Dragon God Palace with other intentions. Hui chuckled. When Yi Cheng heard this, his heart sank. There was indeed a purpose. You are from the Dragon Slayer Palace? Because only the people from the Dragon Slayer Palace would have the guts. Hui Yi was about to speak when a voice suddenly sounded from outside. Yi Cheng. The few of them looked at the tightly shut door. Qin Feiyang said, It's Yi Zhong's voice. Big brother. Yi Cheng came back to his senses and immediately turned around to attack the barrier. But at the same time, Hui Yi took a step forward, landed beside Yuda, and picked him up. Yuda couldn't react at all. And just like that, he lost the only bargaining chip in his hand, the big black wolf. Following closely, Hui Yi caught up to Yi Cheng with another step, grabbed Yi Cheng's head, and turned to look at Qin Feiyang. Qin Feiyang waved his hand, and the group of people immediately disappeared, including the universe bag on the ground. The divine force barrier also quickly dissipated. Following closely, Hui Yi silently appeared and erased the aura that remained in the main hall. Then he disappeared without a trace. Not long after, the door was pushed open, and Yi Zhong walked into the hall suspiciously, scanning his surroundings. Where is he? Big brother, I'm here. Hurry up and search with your spiritual will. In the hall of the ancient castle, Yi Cheng looked at Yi Zhong in the air and roared crazily. Qin Feiyang retracted his gaze and said indifferently, "It's useless. Other than me, no one can hear the sounds from inside the castle. As for spiritual will, don't even think about it, because I have the heavenly divine stone." "What? Heavenly divine stone?" Yi Cheng's gaze trembled. Just who was this person? He even had such a treasure. Outside, Yi Zhong quickly left. Qin Feiyang waved his hand, and the image disappeared. He turned to look at Yi Cheng and Yuda and smiled. "Welcome to my world." "Your world?" The two of them looked at each other in dismay, then looked outside through the gate of the ancient castle. Could it be that there was an independent world outside? Suddenly, Yi Cheng saw the four heaven-defying divine artifact floating in the air behind him. This wasn't the sunset bow. How was this possible? What? The four great ancestral dragons' heaven-defying divine artifact. Why are they here? Weren't the four heaven-defying divine artifacts snatched away by Qin Feiyang? Yuda was also very surprised. Suddenly, their bodies shook, and they looked at each other at the same time. Gradually, a trace of fear crept up in their eyes, and then they slowly looked at Qin Feiyang. There was a thought in their minds that they never wanted to believe. Qin Feiyang and Hua Yi smiled faintly. Qin Feiyang took out a facial restoration pill, threw it into his mouth, and quickly restored his true appearance. "It's really you." Yi Cheng's eyes trembled. He never thought that this arrogant Li Bu was actually Qin Feiyang. Yuda was so scared that he collapsed on the spot. Back then, after asking Qin Feiyang, Jiang Dafei had already secretly spread the news about Qin Feiyang. So now, almost everyone in Divine Land knew about Qin Feiyang's deeds and appearance. This was a young man who gave the dragons a headache. Hua Yi said discontentedly, Hey, I'm a little unhappy that you're ignoring me like this." He also swallowed an illusory form pill and returned to his original appearance. "You're Hua Yi." Yuda looked at Hua Yi and said with a frightened expression, "Haha. Yes, that's the expression. It's also a kind of pride to be able to make you dragons' lackeys tremble in fear." Hua Yi laughed. Hua Yi, primary immortal. Yuda was desperate to the extreme. Why was he so unlucky to meet these two fierce people? So lively. At this time, accompanied by laughter, Fire Lotus walked in with a mask on, not hiding her cultivation. Half-step immortal. As soon as Yi Cheng saw Fire Lotus, his face turned pale. It turned out that there was a supreme expert beside Qin Feiyang. Fire Lotus looked at Yi Cheng and said with a smile, "Actually, I appeared in the Dragon God Palace, but you didn't see it." "Appeared?" Yi Cheng was bewildered. Qin Feiyang said, "She was the one who killed the island master." "So it's you." Yi Cheng's pupils suddenly shrank. "Bastard! You dared to take the opportunity to sneak an attack on this emperor, and use this emperor to threaten Big Brother? You simply haven't died yet." The big black wolf roared and immediately pounced towards Yuda. "Ah!" At this moment, Yuda's blood-curdling screams resounded. Qin Feiyang also ignored Yuda, looked at Yi Cheng and laughed. "Don't be nervous, follow me." With that, he walked out of the castle. Yi Cheng looked at Yuda, then hurriedly followed Qin Feiyang out. Fire Lotus followed beside Yi Cheng, preventing him from killing Qin Feiyang. Hua Yi stayed in the castle and looked at Yuda in ridicule. Outside, Qin Feiyang looked at Fire Lotus and laughed. "Go make me a pot of tea. I want to properly entertain Senior Yi." But Fire Lotus glanced at Yi Cheng. "Don't worry. Senior Yi is a smart person. He knows what to do and what not to do." Qin Feiyang laughed faintly. "All right." Fire Lotus nodded and walked towards the courtyard. Yi Cheng looked at Fire Lotus's back and then looked at Qin Feiyang. He did have the urge to take the opportunity to attack Qin Feiyang, but he did not have the guts to do so. Suddenly, Yi Cheng looked at an empty space not far away, where a golden sea python was lying on the ground. Beside the golden sea python was the divine body of a golden dragon. That aura seemed to be, that's right. That is the body of the golden dragon ancestor. And that golden sea python is a sea beast king that I subdued in the inner sea. Right now, it is fusing with the body of the golden dragon ancestor. Qin Feiyang laughed. "You're actually willing to let it fuse?" Yi Cheng looked at Qin Feiyang in bewilderment. As a peak 9 Heavens Realm cultivator, and the Vice Hall Master of the Law Enforcement Palace, he naturally knew the benefits of the Golden Sea Python, fusing with the Golden Dragon ancestor. What's there to be reluctant about? Qin Feiyang smiled faintly. Then what about the bodies of the Fire Dragon Clan, Silver Dragon Clan and Black Dragon Clan's ancestor? Yiqing asked. I don't know. It's all done by Fire Lotus. Qin Feiyang shook his head and asked with a smile. How do you feel about my Black Tortoise realm? Chapter 2486. Hearing this, Yiqing looked at the herb fields around him. Every stalk of medicinal herbs shone brightly, and every divine tree swayed in the wind. The air was filled with extremely rich and pure souline energy and crystal vein essence. It could be said that only this herb field was not much inferior to the Dragon God Palace. Suddenly, Yiqing looked at a green divine tree not far away with surprise in his eyes. Qin Feiyang said, That's a tea garden. Tea garden? Yiqing was stunned. In other words, those were all tea trees? This kid was so young. But he had planted so many tea trees? Generally speaking, only people who were older would like to do such things. Fire Lotus helped me do this. Because I like to drink tea. She went through a lot of trouble to cultivate this tea garden. Qin Feiyang smiled faintly. Yiqing nodded and looked at Fire Lotus, who was brewing tea in the courtyard with a trace of envy in his eyes. Behind every successful man, there was a virtuous woman. This saying was true. I'll take you to another place. Qin Feiyang smiled and took Yiqing to the sky above the desert of death. At this time, the divine treasury was opening and countless creatures from the Black Tortoise world poured into the desert of death. These people, Yiqing was surprised. There were so many creatures in the Black Tortoise world, although the strongest among them was only a monarch god. This scene had already far exceeded his expectations. This is a forbidden area in the Black Tortoise world, called the Desert of Death. In the deepest part of the Desert of Death, there is a divine treasury that was carefully arranged by Fire Lotus. Qin Feiyang waved his hand again and brought Yiqing to the sky above the divine treasury. The divine treasury was a 100-story tall tower. At this time, there were already 2 people outside the divine treasury. The 2 were Pai Lupi and Theta Wang. Because their cultivation was the strongest, they were the first to arrive here. The 2 stood outside the divine treasury and looked at the closed stone door, their eyes full of desire. There are countless treasures in the divine treasury. They even have legendary divine artifacts. Furthermore, the divine dragon bodies of the Dragon God Palace Master and the Black Dragon Clan Patriarch are also inside. All kinds of divine pills and pill recipes are inexhaustible. There are even pill recipes that can open the door to potential and increase the cultivation of the war god. This place, to the beings of the Black Tortoise world, is a place filled with temptation and miraculous. And the person who gave them all of this is me, Qin Feiyang said with a smile. When Yiqing heard these words, he couldn't help but be dumbfounded. A pill recipe to unlock the door of potential? This was too shocking. Pai Lupi Theta Wang, Qin Feiyang suddenly said. Below, Pai Lupi and Theta Wang were stunned and looked up at the sky. Their expressions immediately changed, and they hurriedly leaped into the air and landed in front of Qin Feiyang. Their expressions extremely respectful. Qin Feiyang asked with a smile, How's your harvest over the years? Last time, we were lucky enough to obtain the pill recipe for the potential pill, and also a few divine pills. Pai Lupi smiled flatteringly. Last time, we also obtained a pinnacle divine artifact. Theta Wang also smiled. Divine pills. Yiqing's heart trembled as he looked at Pai Lupi and Theta Wang in shock. There were divine pills in this divine treasury. Not bad. You actually obtained the pill recipe for the potential pill. Qin Feiyang was also quite surprised. It's all thanks to you, Lord. The 2 smiled respectfully. What does this have to do with me? Qin Feiyang looked at the 2 suspiciously. Lord, others may not know, but the 2 of us know that this divine treasury was created by you. You are the ruler of the Black Tortoise world. The 2 said. The ruler of the Black Tortoise world. Yiqing's heart trembled again. Haha. Qin Feiyang laughed and praised. The 2 of you are quite smart. You flatter us, Lord. Lord, can you tell us what the most powerful divine item in this divine treasury is? The two of them asked carefully. The most powerful? Qin Feiyang was slightly stunned and smiled. Potential pill, small creation pill, large creation pill, and various divine pills should be considered the most powerful. Potential pill? Small creation pill. Large creation pill? Pai Lupi and Theta Wang looked at each other, and looked at Qin Feiyang suspiciously. Qin Feiyang said, "These 3 pills are used to open the door of potential." When the two of them heard this, a trace of excitement appeared on their faces. In that case, as long as they obtained the pill recipe in the divine treasury, they could open all the doors of potential? Work hard. Although the two of you are currently the strongest people in the Black Tortoise world, the Black Tortoise world is no longer the Black Tortoise world of the past. Everyone is improving. If someone catches up to you, it will be embarrassing. Qin Feiyang smiled. Yes. The two of them replied respectfully. In addition, as the 2 giants of the Black Tortoise world, you should know how to create benefits for others. For example, the pill recipe of the potential pill. For example, some talented youths. In short, don't be too selfish. Qin Feiyang said. Understood. The two of them nodded. Qin Feiyang's meaning was quite obvious. He wanted them to share the pill recipe of the potential pill with the living beings of the Black Tortoise world, and nurture the talented youths of the Black Tortoise world. Alright, you may leave. If something big happens, you can go to the Devil's Land to find the Fire Lotus. Qin Feiyang waved his hand and smiled. This humble one will take his leave. The two of them bowed, turned around and flew down. Black Tortoise world. Ruler. Could it be? Yi Qing looked at Pai Lupi and Thea Wang, then at the Shin treasury, and then at the Great Desert. An unbelievable thought gradually emerged in his mind. This Pai Lupi and Theta Wang were originally 2 guards of the Black Rock City. They were not well known, but now they have become giants, and their cultivation is much stronger than before. Qin Feiyang smiled faintly, and brought Yi Qing to the sky above the Netherworld Sea. The Netherworld Sea. At the same time, many people were searching for treasures and taking risks. Although schemes and killing were everywhere, only with these could a world be considered complete. If a world wanted to develop quickly, these were indispensable. Half an hour later, Qin Feiyang brought Yi Qing back to the Devil's Land. In the courtyard, the fragrance of tea assailed their nostrils. Yi Qing's eyes lit up when he smelled the tea. Obviously, he was a person who loved tea very much. Qin Feiyang walked into the pavilion, pointed to the stone bench opposite him, and said with a smile, "Senior Yi, please take a seat." Yi Qing glanced at the Fire Lotus beside him, and sat on the stone bench. Fire Lotus also sat at the side, and poured a cup of tea for Yi Qing. Yi Qing picked up the teacup, put it at the tip of his nose and smelled it. He couldn't wait to put it to his mouth, and took a small sip. Good tea. Immediately, he couldn't help but exclaim. After living for so many years, he had never drunk tea with such a pure taste. This tea should only exist in the heavens. Qin Feiyang laughed. How is it compared to the tea you drank when you entertained me in the duty hall? It's not on the same level at all. Yi Qing shook his head. Qin Feiyang smiled and asked, "You should have more or less understood the Black Tortoise realm. Now tell me your thoughts." Yi Qing was slightly stunned. After drinking the tea in the teacup, he put down the teacup and looked at Qin Feiyang. The Black Tortoise realm is indeed very good, but compared to the Divine Continent, it's far from being comparable, let alone the entire ancient realm. That's true. But do you know? The Black Tortoise realm is the same as the ancient realm. They are both independent worlds. Qin Feiyang said. Yi Qing's gaze trembled. He had already thought of this, but at this moment, when it came from Qin Feiyang's mouth, he was still shocked. Independent world. In other words, Qin Feiyang was equivalent to a god of creation. There was a huge difference between the creator of a world and the strongest person in a world. The god of creation controlled everything and created everything, and the strongest person, such as Long Zun, only dominated the ancient realm. If she was asked to do anything else, she couldn't do it at all. I don't like to lie. I'm not the god of creation of the Black Tortoise realm yet. But everything in the Black Tortoise realm is under my control. This is indeed true. Qin Feiyang smiled. Yi Cheng was stunned and said in surprise, "Then where did you get this Black Tortoise realm?" Qin Feiyang said, "I got it by chance." Isn't this luck too heaven-defying? Yi Cheng was speechless. He actually got an independent small world. He said, "Why are you telling me this?" "To tell you the truth. My goal in entering the Dragon God Palace is Yi Zhong." Qin Feiyang said, "My big brother?" Yi Cheng was stunned. "Yes. The ancestors gave me a mission to persuade Yi Zhong to join the Dragon Slayer Palace." Qin Feiyang smiled. "I see." Yi Cheng suddenly understood and frowned. "So you attacked me and used me to threaten my big brother?" "Wrong. If I wanted to use you to threaten Yi Zhong, do you think I would need to sit here and drink tea with you?" Qin Feiyang said. Yi Cheng nodded. That was indeed the case. Not only did he receive him with such good tea, but he also took him to understand the Black Tortoise realm. If it was really as he thought, there was no need at all. After pondering for a while, Yi Cheng said suspiciously, "Are you trying to bribe me to persuade my big brother?" "That's what I mean. I believe that if you, the younger brother, speak, it will be more useful than me." Qin Feiyang smiled faintly. "Impossible. Let's not talk about my big brother first. Even I won't submit to you." Yi Cheng shook his head. "I don't need you to submit. We can be friends peacefully. When the time comes, you can enter my Black Tortoise realm at any time. I'm quite friendly to my friends." Qin Feiyang smiled. "The Black Tortoise realm?" Yi Cheng smiled and shook his head. Although the Black Tortoise realm is an independent realm, whether it's the cultivation environment or other aspects, it doesn't seem to have any temptation. The current Black Tortoise realm can't compare to the ancient castle, but the future is hard to say. I believe that in less than 10,000 years, the Black Tortoise realm will surpass the ancient world. Qin Feiyang smiled confidently. Yi Cheng sneered. "This old man is really curious. Where do you get such confidence?" Qin Feiyang said, "My confidence comes from the time array." "Time array?" Yi Cheng was stunned. "The time array of the Black Tortoise realm. A day outside is 100 years here. How many years are in the Black Tortoise realm, if you calculate 10,000 years outside?" Qin Feiyang smiled. "What? 100 years in a day?" Yi Cheng was dumbfounded. Chapter 2487. 1 year, 365 days. 10,000 years was 3,650,000 days. According to the Black Tortoise realm's 100 years, 10,000 years in the ancient realm was 365 million years in the Black Tortoise realm. Just thinking about it was terrifying. Do you think that after 365 million years of development, the Black Tortoise realm still can't catch up to the ancient realm? Maybe it doesn't even need 10,000 years. 1,000 years is enough. Qin Feiyang said. 1,000 years in the ancient realm meant that the Black Tortoise realm had 36,500,000 years. 30 million years was enough for the Black Tortoise realm to rise. At this moment, Yi Cheng was very hesitant. If this child didn't die prematurely, he would definitely become a great talent in the future. He might even surpass Qin Batian and surpass Longzun. Most importantly, he was still so young and already had such achievements. In that case, how shocking would his achievements be in the future? You should have been trapped in the Great Perfection realm for a long time. If I help you open the gate of potential and cultivate in the Black Tortoise realm, I believe that it won't be long before you break through to half-step undying. Moreover, I can give you an endless supply of soul stones. Gate of potential. Endless supply of soul stones. And one day 100 years of time array. I believe that even if you are Yi Zhong's brother, you won't be treated so well in the dragons. Qin Feiyang laughed. Yi Cheng was silent. Frankly speaking, he was moved. Not to mention soul stones and time array. Just opening the gate of potential was something he had longed for a long time. And now, all of this could be satisfied by Qin Feiyang. Could he refuse? To be honest, as long as he wasn't an idiot, he couldn't refuse. But Big Brother was the dragon's guest. If he betrayed the dragons, wouldn't that be the same as betraying Big Brother? You've been in the Dragon God Palace for so many years. I believe you know in your heart how the dragons treat us humans. In their eyes, we humans are just a group of livestock they raise. Is such a dragon worth us risking our lives for? Are they worth our protection? Please remember. You didn't betray us. You abandoned the darkness for the light. You chose the right path for all humans and all the living beings in the ancient world. Qin Feiyang said. The right path? Yi Qing muttered, struggling endlessly in his heart. Humans don't seek glory and wealth, but they seek to leave a mark in history. Now that the opportunity is right before your eyes, what are you hesitating for? Don't tell me that you really want to wait until the future to bear the infamy of a lifetime and go down in infamy, even being despised and ridiculed by their own descendants. Is it worth it for the sake of dragons? Qin Feiyang enunciated each word clearly and forcefully. Every word was like a stab to the heart. Yi Qing could not help but clench his fists. For yourself, for your descendants, wake up. A person's life is neither short nor long. I have to do something meaningful. You have to do something that benefits the future generations, and not help the evildoer do evil. Qin Feiyang sighed. Boom. These words were like a bolt of lightning that ruthlessly struck Yi Qing's mind, causing his body and mind to tremble. That's right. Living in this world, why not do something meaningful? Why not do something that benefits the future generations? Why help the evildoer do evil? Why help the evildoer do evil? It was time to wake up. He could not let his descendants continue to struggle at death's door under the rule of dragons. In this life, he had lived with enough grievances. He could not let his descendants live with such grievances. Phew. Yi Qing took a deep breath, looked at Qin Feiyang and nodded. Okay, this old man promises you. Haha, Qin Feiyang laughed. Fire Lotus beside him also laughed. His painstaking efforts were not in vain. Qin Feiyang raised his teacup and said with a smile, Welcome to the big family. Yi Qing smiled, picked up his teacup, and clinked it with Qin Feiyang. Qin Feiyang finished drinking, put down the teacup, looked at Fire Lotus, and said with a smile, Give me 2 portions of the Supreme Nirvana Elixir. Okay. Fire Lotus nodded. Supreme Nirvana Elixir? Yi Qing looked at Qin Feiyang suspiciously. Supreme Nirvana Elixir opens the door of potential in the Paragon God realm. And now, I can only help you open the door of potential in the Paragon God realm, because I haven't mastered the pill formula to open the door of potential in the 9th heaven realm. Qin Feiyang smiled faintly. That's enough. Yi Qing was overjoyed. In the past, not to mention the door of potential in the Paragon God realm, even the first level of the door of potential was a dream for him. Fire Lotus took out 2 portions of medicinal herbs and handed them to Qin Feiyang. Qin Feiyang immediately got up and walked towards the castle with the 2 portions of medicinal herbs. Wait. Yi Qing suddenly got up. What's wrong? Qin Feiyang stopped and turned to look at him suspiciously. Yi Qing pondered for a while, then raised his head to look at Qin Feiyang and said, Control this old man. Qin Feiyang was stunned. Fire Lotus also looked at Yi Qing in surprise. This was the first time she met someone who took the initiative to be controlled. Although we haven't known each other for long, I've heard rumors about you. You're a very cautious young man. So, in order to get along well with each other in the future, you'd better control this old man directly, so as to avoid distrust and suspicion, so that this old man won't regret it in the future, Yi Qing said. Hearing these words, Qin Feiyang instantly had a whole new level of respect for Yi Qing. This decisive personality was a person who could achieve great things. Okay. Qin Feiyang nodded and evolved the slave seal, but immediately after, he frowned and shook his head. I'm afraid I can't control you now. Why? Yi Qing was suspicious. Because of the fate contract. The slave seal can break the fate contract. Once you're controlled by me, the fate contract will automatically be broken. At that time, your big brother will naturally notice. Right now, I don't want to face him head-on, Qin Feiyang said. It can break the fate contract? Then doesn't that mean you? Yi Qing stared at Qin Feiyang in surprise. On the day I entered the Dragon God Palace, the fate contract between me and the big black wolf was broken. It's just that at that time, The divine stone of fate was in the hands of the young man. So other than the young man, no one knew. Qin Feiyang said. Yi Qing asked suspiciously, then how did you enter and exit the Dragon God Palace? Qin Feiyang smiled faintly. That's simple. I just needed to find someone to help. Find someone to help? That means you've already bribed someone in the Dragon God Palace. Yi Qing frowned. It's not bribed. At first, Chao Deyuan knew my identity, but he wasn't honest, so I killed him. As for Hong Yi, I gave him some benefits, but he didn't ask, and I didn't say anything. He's a smart person. Qin Feiyang smiled faintly. I see. Yi Qing nodded and said, wait, why does the name Hong Yi sound familiar? He's someone from the Law Enforcement Hall. Qin Feiyang said. Someone from the Law Enforcement Hall? Yi Qing was stunned. After thinking carefully for a while, he said, there seems to be such a person. In other words, Hong Yi still doesn't know your identity? Yes. Qin Feiyang nodded. That's good. Yi Qing nodded and said, actually, I'm not controlled by the divine stone of fate. No. Qin Feiyang was stunned. Fire Lotus was also very surprised. Because of Big Brother, when I entered the Dragon God Hall, I didn't participate in the assessment and came in directly. It's also because of Big Brother that the dragons are also very polite to me. Yi Qing said. Qin Feiyang asked, then how did you get in and out of the Dragon God Hall? Don't tell me you didn't go out after you came in? Of course I did. As Yi Qing said, he took out an identity token from his pocket. This identity token was very different from Qin Feiyang's token. Qin Feiyang's token was golden, but the token in Yi Qing's hand was milky white. I can enter and leave the Dragon God Hall freely because of this token. There are only 3 tokens in the entire Dragon God Hall. One is in Big Brother's hands, one is in my hands, and the last one is in the hands of the Beast Emperor in the Inner Sea. In other words, only the 3 of us can enter and leave the Dragon God Hall freely without being controlled. Yi Qing explained. So that's how it is. Qin Feiyang looked at the token. This token had Long Zun's aura, so it should be from Long Zun. Yi Qing said, if you need it, I can give it to you. No need. You keep it. It's convenient for you to enter and exit the Dragon God Hall. As for me, I have plenty of ways. Qin Feiyang smiled faintly, waved his hand, and the enslavement seal turned into a stream of light and disappeared into the top of Yi Qing's head. Soon, the enslavement seal was completed. Qin Feiyang also followed him into the ancient castle and saw Yuda lying on the ground on his last breath. His entire body was dripping with blood. The big black wolf at the side finally felt comfortable. How is it? Huai asked. Done. Qin Feiyang smiled. That's it? Huai was slightly taken aback. Not bad, you're quite capable. He thought that it would take a lot of effort to make Yi Qing surrender, but he didn't expect to be convinced so quickly. I'll go refine pills first. As for this Yuda. Qin Feiyang lowered his head to look at Yuda and said indifferently, there's no use keeping him, kill him. After saying that, he entered the cultivation room without looking back. But when Yuda heard this, his body suddenly trembled, and he hurriedly got up shouting, don't kill me, I beg you. It's useless to beg. Who asked you to provoke us? The big black wolf shook his head. I was wrong. I don't dare anymore. Let me go, I beg you. Yuda cried out in grief. He was really unlucky, encountering these fierce people as soon as he came out of seclusion. It's so noisy. Huai glared at him, and with a wave of his hand, ended Yuda's life. Not long later, Qin Feiyang walked out of the cultivation room, holding 2 supreme nirvana pills in his hands, both of which had a dragon-shaped pill chi. When Yi Qing saw these 2 pills, he was shocked in his heart. When he was in the sky above the divine treasury, he heard Pai Lupi and Huai talking about the divine pills. He was still thinking, where did the divine pills in the divine treasury come from? Now he finally knew that it was refined by Qin Feiyang. He could actually refine a divine pill. This brat was truly a monster. Chapter 2488. Next. Of course, it was to help Yi Qing open the door of potential. With the help of a half-step undying expert like Fire Lotus, it was naturally a simple matter. Qin Feiyang, come here. Hui glanced at Fire Lotus and Yi Cheng, then waved to Qin Feiyang. What? Qin Feiyang looked at him suspiciously. Just come when I tell you to. Hui was unhappy. Qin Feiyang walked over doubtfully. Hui continued to lead Qin Feiyang to the tea garden not far away. Not long after, the two entered the tea garden. Qin Feiyang frowned and said, "So mysterious, what's the matter?" "I just have a question that I want to ask you. But you have to promise me that you won't tell anyone about this." Hui glanced at Fire Lotus and the others in the courtyard and said in a low voice, "Okay, I promise you." Qin Feiyang nodded. Hui said, "When I returned to the Nine Heavens Palace this time, I saw Lan Er." "Shangguan Fenglan?" Qin Feiyang was stunned and asked puzzledly, "What can happen between the two of you?" Hey, what are you talking about? Why can't I have something with her?" Hui was dissatisfied. "Then what is it? Could it be that Shangguan Fenglan likes another man?" Qin Feiyang was surprised. "Get lost. Is Lan Er such a fickle woman? Don't insult her." Hui said angrily. Qin Feiyang's face twitched and asked, "Then what is it?" "That's right. When I went back this time, I asked her whether she likes me or not." Hui said. "Then what did she say?" Qin Feiyang was curious. "She said she likes you." Hui said. "Isn't that a good thing? What are you still hesitating about?" Qin Feiyang was puzzled. A good thing is definitely a good thing. However, the problem is that I did not ask her with the identity of Hui. Instead, I asked her with the identity of Yi Xiaoyao. Hui frowned. "What the hell? You haven't confessed to her yet." Qin Feiyang was stunned. "Do I dare? If she finds out that Hui is Yi Xiaoyao, the Vice Palace Master of Nine Heavens Palace that she is familiar with, wouldn't she fall out with me on the spot?" Hui said in distress. "That's true." Qin Feiyang nodded. Hui said, "So I want to ask you, what should we do about this?" "I really can't do anything about this." Qin Feiyang shook his head. "Are we still brothers? Can you bear to see your brother remain single for the rest of his life?" Hui angrily glared at him. "This has nothing to do with being brothers. As the saying goes, the one who started the trouble should be the one who started it. You'll have to deal with this yourself." Qin Feiyang was helpless. "I know I have to deal with it myself, but you have to help me come up with a plan, right?" Hui rubbed his forehead. "I'm puzzled. Shangguan Fenglan has already entered Nine Heavens Palace. Why didn't you confess to her before? Why did you have to wait until you changed your name to Hui to pursue her?" Qin Feiyang was suspicious. "I didn't pay much attention to her before. Let's talk about it later. I'm rarely in Nine Heavens Palace. I remember the last time I saw her was when she became the law enforcement hall master. At that time, she was just a little girl in my eyes. She didn't have any charm at all." Hui sighed. Qin Feiyang said, "Then she has charm now? Aren't you talking nonsense? If she doesn't have charm now, would I be so shameless to pursue her? Actually, I'm still worried about another problem. Say, if I really marry her, will people say that I'm an old cow eating young grass behind my back?" Hui asked. Qin Feiyang was stunned. Hui touched his chin and said narcissistically, "Although my appearance is undeniably handsome, I'm still much older than Lan Er." "Get lost." Qin Feiyang rolled his eyes. There was no doubt that he was quite handsome. How shameless of him. "Don't be unconvinced. Compared to you, I'm more than enough," Hui said proudly. "Fine, you're handsome and invincible. You can slowly think about it yourself." Qin Feiyang glared at him and turned to leave. Don't. You're handsome. Handsome to the point where there's no justice. Quickly tell me, how do we solve this problem?" Hui quickly grabbed Qin Feiyang and said with a flattering smile. Qin Feiyang thought for a while and said with a smile, "Actually, this matter is very easy to solve." Say it. Hui urged. "You can use the identity of Hui to marry her first. When the rice is cooked, you can confess to her. What can she do when she falls out with me?" Qin Feiyang said. "Yes." Hui patted his head and said, "When the rice is cooked, I'm not afraid of her falling out with me. She really listened to me." Qin Feiyang was stunned. This guy didn't have a brain. Didn't he realize that he was deliberately messing with him? If he confessed after marriage, with Shangguan Fenglan's character, Wouldn't she make a scene? He was afraid that she would kick him off the bed. Good idea, really good idea. The more Hui thought about it, the more he felt that it was feasible. As long as you think it's good. Qin Feiyong held back his laughter and turned to walk toward the courtyard. He couldn't help but look forward to the scene when Shangguan Fenglan fell out with him. How embarrassing would Hui be at that time? Thinking about it, he couldn't help but want to laugh. A moment later, Yi Cheng's door of supreme god potential was finally completely opened. Throughout the whole process, he didn't rest. After opening the first level, he immediately opened the second level. After all, his cultivation had reached the peak of the ninth heaven realm, and his endurance was far beyond ordinary people. Of course, this had something to do with his willpower. Without strong willpower, it was impossible to open so many doors of potential at once. This is the potential mark? Yi Cheng entered the attic. After washing the blood off his body, he looked down at the potential mark on his chest, his eyes full of excitement. He didn't even dare to dream of the potential gate before. But he didn't expect to open so many levels at once. He could clearly feel that whether it was his external essence, qi, spirit, or internal potential and comprehension, they had all undergone earth-shaking changes. His whole person seemed to have been reborn. Even his old face was a few years older. The potential gate, the time array of 1 day and 100 years, and the inexhaustible soul stones. Maybe I can really step into the half-step invincible realm soon. Once he stepped into the half-step invincible realm, he would really be like a carp leaping over the dragon gate, soaring into the sky. Yi Cheng suppressed the excitement in his heart, changed into clean clothes, and walked out of the attic. How do you feel? Qin Feiyong asked with a smile. Very good. Yi Cheng nodded. Opening the potential gate would not only greatly improve his comprehension, but also make it easier and faster to comprehend and upgrade the level of the divine art. Even the speed of refining soul stones would increase several times. He couldn't wait to cultivate in seclusion right now. But he knew that Qin Feiyong must have something to do, because he came to the Deacon Hall earlier to exchange merit points. Buzz! Suddenly, the image crystal buzzed. Qin Feiyong instinctively took out the image crystal, but found that it wasn't his image crystal that was buzzed. It's mine, Yi Cheng said. Then let's go. Qin Feiyong put away the image crystal and appeared in the hall with Yi Cheng and the big black wolf. Then he took a phantom pill and turned into Li Buer's appearance. At the same time, the big black wolf also turned into a big black dog. Then the man and the wolf retreated to the side. Yi Cheng activated the image crystal, and a shadow immediately appeared. It was Yi Zhong. Yi Zhong frowned. Where did you go? Yi Cheng said. I went back to the law enforcement hall for something. What's wrong? Yi Zhong said in a deep voice. I'll go home immediately. Go home. Yi Cheng was slightly taken aback. But immediately after, Yi Cheng's face changed, and he looked at Yi Zhong and asked, could it be? Yi Zhong nodded. Yi Cheng's face suddenly turned pale. Okay, I'll go back now. What about you? Yi Zhong said. I'll go find revered dragon to explain the matters of the Dragon God Hall, and then go back. Okay. Yi Cheng nodded and turned off the image crystal. He looked at Qin Feiyong and said, I have urgent matters to attend to and have to leave the Dragon God Hall. You go back first. What happened? Tell me, maybe I can help. Qin Feiyong said. You can't help. Yi Cheng shook his head, opened an altar and quickly left. What's going on? Qin Feiyong and the big black wolf looked at each other in dismay. Make a trip home. Could it be that something happened at home? The big black wolf was bewildered. Maybe. Qin Feiyong nodded. Otherwise he wouldn't be in such a hurry. Moreover, it might take a long time. Otherwise Yi Zhong wouldn't have specially gone to find revered dragon to explain the matters of the Dragon God Hall. The big black wolf asked. Then what about us now? This. Qin Feiyong frowned. Originally, he wanted to enter the Divine Weapon Pavilion, but now that Yi Cheng had left, no one would help him exchange for contribution points. He couldn't possibly barge in. After thinking for a while, Qin Feiyong said, Then let's go back first. The big black wolf said, Then you go back, I'll take a look around. Qin Feiyong was startled. he looked at the big black wolf and said, "Then don't cause trouble." "Is this emperor the kind of wolf that likes to cause trouble?" The big black wolf rolled its eyes at Qin Feiyang, then took a step forward and disappeared into the mountains below. Qin Feiyang smiled helplessly, then opened an altar and left. After returning to the cave, Qin Feiyang entered the castle to continue cultivating. After breaking through to half-step god realm, he could refine about 1,650 soul stones a day. And from half-step to early-stage god realm, he needed 10 billion soul stones. According to the time outside, with his current speed, refining 10 billion soul stones would take more than 16,600 years. But in terms of the time in the ancient castle, 1 day was 100 years, 10 days was 1,000 years, and 100 days was 10,000 years. In other words, inside the ancient castle, Qin Feiyang only needed 160 days to refine these 10 billion soul stones. 160 days was only 5 months, and it passed in the blink of an eye. And on that evening, 2 powerful auras descended outside the Dragon God Hall. Soon a white-clothed woman, accompanied by a black-clothed middle-aged man, walked up the stone stairs and entered the Dragon God Hall. "Everyone in the Dragon God Hall, listen up. Grand Hall Master Yi Zhong has returned home, due to some matters. From now on, this sovereign will temporarily take over the position of Grand Hall Master." The white-clothed woman scanned the divine Dragon Island and suddenly spoke. Her tone was very calm, but it was like a clap of thunder that resounded in the sky above the Dragon God Hall. Chapter 2489. The Grand Hall Master has something to do. What's going on? He even sent someone to temporarily replace the Grand Hall Master to handle the affairs of the Dragon God Palace. Is he going to be away for a long time? As soon as the white-clothed woman said that, the entire Dragon God Palace was in an uproar. Everyone was discussing this voice. At the same time, inside the castle, Qin Feiyang suddenly opened his eyes, 2 rays of light bursting out. This voice was so familiar. He heard it a few days ago. It seemed to be, that's right, the ancestral dragon of the White Dragon clan. Back in the Internal Sea, it was because of this woman that Feng Daji self-destructed. She was actually the temporary Grand Hall Master. The ancestral dragon. He had to be careful this time, because this woman had a heaven-defying divine artifact in her hands. Big brother. Soon, the big black wolf ran into the cave and called out. Qin Feiyang got up and left the castle, appearing in front of the big black wolf. "It's the ancestral dragon." The big black wolf immediately said. "I know." Qin Feiyang nodded. "But other than the ancestral dragon, there's another person. According to my sources, it seems to be the 10th elder, who died in your hands back then." The big black wolf said again. "10th elder?" Qin Feiyang was stunned and said in surprise. "You mean the 10th elder of the Black Dragon clan?" "Yes." The big black wolf nodded. "Enemies are bound to meet on a narrow road." Qin Feiyang chuckled. "What's more coincidental is that he's the temporary island master of the first island, overseeing the Deacon Palace." The big black wolf said. "Ah." Qin Feiyang was stunned. "I guess the dragons sent him to oversee the first island to keep an eye on you." The big black wolf said. "How do you know?" Qin Feiyang was stunned and looked at it curiously. "Because he's a half-step Invincible Realm expert, and Big Sister's cultivation is also half-step Invincible Realm. So it's more than enough to keep an eye on you. But what he doesn't know is that we have Hui, a beginner Invincible Realm expert." The big black wolf laughed evilly. Qin Feiyang chuckled. "Don't be rash. Wait until I become a paragon god. Then I'll go and meet him. I have to dare to. I didn't see him. As soon as I heard that he came to the first island, I immediately ran back. Half-step indestructible, we can't afford to offend them." The big black wolf shook its head. "It's good that you know." Qin Feiyang smiled faintly, and brought the big black wolf into the ancient castle, continuing his closed-door cultivation. Whoosh! Early the next morning, a middle-aged man about 1.8 meters tall with a thin body and a cold face descended in the sky above the valley. This was the 10th elder of the Black Dragon clan. The 10th elder lowered his head and looked at the cave abode below, his eyes emitting a fierce light. Beside him was a law enforcer at the ninth heaven realm. The law enforcer shouted arrogantly, "Libu Air, the 10th elder of the Black Dragons is here. Come out and welcome him." However, after waiting for a while, Qin Feiyang didn't appear, nor did he hear Qin Feiyang's response. The law enforcer looked at the 10th elder and said angrily, "Grand Elder, this person is too presumptuous." The 10th elder's eyes flashed coldly and he said, "Go and drag him out." Yes. The law enforcer stepped in front of the cave abode, and a light screen immediately appeared. Humph! The law enforcer smiled disdainfully and waved his hand, shattering the light screen immediately. In the ancient castle, a trace of blood flowed out from the corner of Qin Feiyang's mouth. Then he opened his eyes and 2 rays of cold light burst out of them. Then, Qin Feiyang waved his hand, and an image appeared in the air. The law enforcer swaggered into the cave abode. Now that he had the 10th elder's support, he wasn't afraid. But when he entered the cave abode, the law enforcer couldn't help but be stunned. After all this time, there was no one. The law enforcer released his immortal will again, and found nothing. So he turned around and walked out of the cave abode. He looked up at the 10th elder respectfully and said, "He's not in the cave abode." "Not here." The 10th elder raised his eyebrows. The law enforcer said, "He probably went somewhere else, or left the Dragon God Hall for something." "Then you stay here and wait for him. When he comes back, immediately take him to the duty hall." The 10th elder said, "Yes." The law enforcer nodded. The 10th elder immediately turned around and disappeared into the void in front of him. The law enforcer squatted outside the cave abode. In the ancient castle, Qin Feiyang waved his hand, and the image disappeared, and he continued to cultivate in seclusion. "Guard. Then you can slowly guard." Time flew by. Outside, more than 5 months had passed. But in the ancient castle, more than 10,000 years had passed. Boom! Qin Feiyang's cultivation finally broke through and stepped into the early stage of the immortal realm. It wasn't just him. White-Eyed Wolf, Big Black Wolf, the 3 Black Panther brothers, and Madman all had their cultivations improved by leaps and bounds. Qin Feiyang restrained his aura and walked out of the ancient castle. Looking at the courtyard beside him, he saw Fire Lotus and Hoi standing beside the courtyard, looking not far away. Not far away in an open space, the golden sea python was lying on the ground, and the golden dragon ancestral dragon's body had disappeared. At this moment, the golden sea python was glowing with a bright divine light. "What is it?" Qin Feiyang walked over in surprise. Fire Lotus was taken aback and turned to look at Qin Feiyang with a smile. "You're out of seclusion." "Yes." Qin Feiyang nodded. Fire Lotus said, "This sea python has reached the final step of fusion." "I see." Qin Feiyang suddenly realized and asked, "Then isn't it about to transform?" Huai retracted his gaze and said, "It will probably take a while. The ancestral dragon's body is so difficult to fuse with?" Qin Feiyang was speechless. It had been more than 16,000 years in the ancient castle, and it still hadn't succeeded. Otherwise, how can it be called the ancestral dragon? But this little guy shouldn't be able to transform into the ancestral dragon. Because the golden dragon ancestral dragon is not dead. Huai said. Qin Feiyang smiled and said, "It's not bad to be able to transform into a golden dragon." "That's true." Huai nodded. Qin Feiyang said, "All right then, I'll go out and meet the 10th elder first. Then you have to be careful. Because he has seen you before. Don't let him see through your identity." Fire Lotus warned. "I know." Qin Feiyang nodded. Boom. However, at this moment, a powerful aura rushed out from below the medicine field. Qin Feiyang and the other 2 were taken aback and hurriedly turned their heads to look. Was it Feng Daji's aura? Whoosh. The next moment, an old man with a ruddy complexion and white hair covered in flames rushed out from the ground and stood above the medicine field, looking around in confusion. Where was this? So many medicinal herbs? So many spirit vein and crystal vein? Qin Feiyang looked at Feng Daji and said in astonishment, "Huai, didn't you say that it would take him at least tens of thousands of years to reconstruct his divine soul? Didn't I also say that spirit vein is a great help in condensing the divine soul? Fire Lotus placed him in the spirit vein, so of course the speed will be faster. However, he has only condensed his divine soul and hasn't reconstructed his body yet. It should still take a while, Hui said. Qin Feiyang? Hui. It was also at this moment. Feng Daji saw Qin Feiyang and the other two, and was slightly stunned, then hurriedly flew in front of the three. Welcome back. Qin Feiyang smiled. How long has it been since I self-destructed? Feng Daji asked. Qin Feiyang said. Not long, only half a year. What? Only half a year has passed. I can reconstruct my divine soul in half a year? Feng Daji was shocked. You guys explained to him. Qin Feiyang said to the Fire Lotus duo. Then changed his appearance, and continued to suppress his cultivation to the level of a beginner war god. Then, he drove the ancient castle, and left the cave without anyone noticing. Swish. After a while, he landed in a desolate forest outside the valley, and then slowly returned to the valley. Li Bu'er, you're finally willing to come back. When Qin Feiyang entered the valley, the law enforcer guarding the valley immediately opened his eyes and said angrily. He had actually waited for nearly half a year. He even thought that this person had died outside. You are? Qin Feiyang looked at the law enforcer suspiciously. The law enforcer said with a cold face. I'm the law enforcer of the law enforcement hall, Lin Hua. Law enforcer? Qin Feiyang was slightly stunned and asked suspiciously. Why are you here? I'm waiting for you here. Where have you been these past few months? The law enforcer said angrily. Qin Feiyang said. I've been cultivating in seclusion beside a pond nearby. Don't you have a cave residence? Why didn't you cultivate in seclusion in your cave residence? Why did you go somewhere else? When the law enforcer heard this, he immediately became irritable. Qin Feiyang said with a smile. The scenery there is good. The scenery is good? The law enforcer almost went crazy and shouted. Since the scenery there is good, why didn't you move your cave residence there? Qin Feiyang held back his laughter and asked. Why are you looking for me? Nonsense. Why would I wait for you here for so long? Follow me to the duty hall immediately. Lin Hua waved his hand angrily and opened a teleportation altar. Why are we going to the duty hall? Qin Feiyang was suspicious. Lin Hua shouted. Why are you talking so much nonsense? Hurry up. Okay. Qin Feiyang nodded and followed Lin Hua onto the altar. The next moment, the two landed on the square of the duty hall. It's Li Bu'er. A few disciples had just come out of the Divine Weapon Pavilion and the Divine Art Treasury. When they saw Qin Feiyang, a trace of panic appeared in their eyes. Back then, the news of Qin Feiyang killing Wang Darren and the other two had spread throughout the first island. Even the second and third islands were talking about it. This guy is actually a low-level war god. Haven't you had enough of the game of pretending to be a pig to eat a tiger? A few of them were speechless. Who didn't know that this person was hiding his cultivation? However, no one knew Qin Feiyang's true cultivation. Let's go. Lin Hua fiercely glared at Qin Feiyang, then walked towards the duty hall. He is a law enforcer? The law enforcer personally came and brought Li Bu'er to the duty hall. What is he doing? A few disciples didn't leave and looked at Qin Feiyang curiously. Lord. Lin Hua stood in front of the door and looked at the 10th elder sitting inside. He bowed respectfully. Where is he? The 10th elder asked. Lin Hua turned his head and looked at Qin Feiyang, who was walking slowly, and shouted, Hurry up and come here. I'm coming. Qin Feiyang walked over and looked inside the main hall. His heart trembled. He saw a thin middle-aged man sitting beside the tea table in the main hall. He was wearing a black robe, and his black hair was draped over his shoulders. His dark eyes were as sharp as blades. It was indeed the 10th elder. Chapter 2490. Lin Hua entered the main hall and ran to the great elder's side. He looked at Qin Feiyang and said, This is the 10th elder of the Black Dragon clan. Hurry up and greet him. 10th elder? Qin Feiyang was shocked. He cupped his hands and said, Disciple Li Bu'er greets the 10th elder. The 10th elder sized up Qin Feiyang with a trace of disdain in his old eyes. He said indifferently, Come in and talk. You have a noble status. How would I dare to enter? I'll listen to your reprimand outside the door, Qin Feiyang said. The 10th elder looked at Qin Feiyang in surprise and nodded. At least you know the rules. Although I'm young, I still know the rules. Qin Feiyang smiled. All right then. I won't beat around the bush with you. Hand over the supreme grade and legendary grade divine techniques that you obtained. The 10th elder transmitted his voice. As expected, it's for this matter, Qin Feiyang muttered. However, why hadn't Yi Cheng and Yi Zhong returned yet? It had been almost half a year. Also, why did the 10th elder send a message? Wait a minute. He noticed the disciples not far away, and immediately understood what was going on. It seemed that the 10th elder didn't dare to be too arrogant. Because if the disciples below knew that the Dragon God Palace was actually taking back the Qilin technique and the serious demonic book, they would definitely talk behind their backs. In this way, whether it was the Dragon God Palace or the dragons, their reputation would be damaged. Didn't you hear? The 10th elder looked at the indifferent Qin Feiyang and slightly raised his eyebrows as he thought to himself. Qin Feiyang said, Elder, he didn't send a message. The great elder immediately glared at him with a threatening look. But Qin Feiyang turned a blind eye and said with a frown, Elder, you're a little too much. Too much? What's too much? What is he talking about? Not far away, the disciples were puzzled. Lin Hua was also dumbfounded. The only people who knew that Qin Feiyang had obtained the Supreme Godhead formula were Yi Zhong, Yi Cheng, Yuda, and the dragons. Yuda was dead. Yi Zhong and Yi Zichen weren't in the Dragon God Hall either. Therefore, only the dragons knew about this. At the same time, hearing this, the 10th elder glared at Qin Feiyang, a cold light flashing in his eyes. The supreme grade Qilin incantation and the legendary Heavenly Wolf demonic tome were both obtained by me and the big wolf dog through luck. Now, you're forcing us to return it to you. How is this reasonable? Qin Feiyang still turned a blind eye and said unhappily, What? Sovereign tier divine art. Legendary deity technique. As soon as he said that, the disciples nearby all had expressions of disbelief. Could it be that
Lin
half a
Hua's
year
face
ago,
was also filled with shock.
killed Wang Darren,
This man
and the
and
other
dog
two
had actually
the
obtained
10th
the
elder's
supreme
face
grade god
became more and more
incantation?
ugly. When did this
As an
happen?
old antique who
Why
had
is there
lived
no
for
news
God
at
knows
all?
how many years?
Wait a minute. How could he not see that Qin Feiyang deliberately said it in public? Since he had already said it out loud, there was no need to continue to hide it. Every blade of grass and every tree in the Dragon God Hall belongs to us, the dragons. Do you think we, the dragons, can do whatever we want? Let's talk about it later. Who knows if you really got it by luck? The 10th elder sneered. Then, how do you think I got it? Did you open the jade box and check it one by one? Elder, the rules of the divine art treasury are known by everyone in the Dragon God Hall. You just want to find an excuse to convince the public. But you don't know that if you say this, not only will it not make people think you're smart, but it will make you look stupid. Qin Feiyang smiled faintly. Damn, is this person borrowing courage from the heavens? Although the 10th elder is really too much, he can't be scolded like this. Stupid. He dares to say these two words. I really admire his courage. The disciples were shocked. They heard that this person was arrogant, but they didn't expect him to be arrogant to this extent. He didn't even put the 10th elder of the Black Dragon clan in his eyes. Lin Hua was also stunned for a moment. When he came back to his senses, he immediately shouted in a stern voice, Impudent! Who are you to talk to the 10th elder like this? And who are you? I'm talking to the 10th elder. Who are you to interrupt? Do you think you're more powerful than the 10th elder? Qin Feiyang shouted. Lin Hua's expression stiffened. He quickly looked at the 10th elder and said, Sir, I didn't mean that. Shut up. The 10th elder glared at him fiercely, then looked at Qin Feiyang and said, What a sharp tongue. But no matter what you say, you have to hand over the Qilin incantation and the serious demonic book today. What if I don't hand it over? Qin Feiyang said. Boom. The 10th elder directly used his actions to prove it. A terrifying pressure rolled toward Qin Feiyang. What happened? As soon as the pressure appeared, it startled everyone. Many people ran out of their cave abodes and looked at the duty hall in surprise. The disciples who were watching the show also turned around and fled the mountain peak in horror. Hey, what's going on? Many people gathered around. Last time, When Li Bu'er killed Wang Darren and the other two, he obtained a supreme-level divine incantation. It seems to be called the Qilin incantation. Now, the 10th elder of the Black Dragon clan wants him to hand over the divine incantation. Of course, Li Bu'er won't do it, so he angered the 10th elder. Several disciples whispered, "What? His luck is too good. He actually obtained a supreme-level divine incantation. But isn't this dragon's too much? He didn't steal or rob. He got it openly from the treasury of the divine incantation. Why should he take it back?" Voices of discussion immediately rang out. Some people were angry at the dragon's actions. Wasn't he deliberately bullying others? But there were also people who gloated. So what if he was lucky? So what if he got a supreme-level divine incantation? He still had to return it to the dragons. Therefore, one must not be arrogant, let alone go against the dragons. Otherwise, one would suffer retribution sooner or later. In fact, these people were just jealous. Especially those who often entered the treasury of the divine incantation. Every time they entered, they hoped that they could get a supreme-level divine incantation and soar into the sky. But it always ended in disappointment. So when they learned that Qin Feiyang actually got a supreme-level divine incantation, they felt unbalanced. On the mountain peak, in front of the duty hall, Qin Feiyang was imprisoned by the pressure, and his face was a little hazy. If the soft approach didn't work, then the hard approach? Did they think he was easy to bully? Fine. Then he would make a big fuss and destroy this dragon god hall. Boom. But suddenly, a terrifying aura descended, and a snow python appeared out of thin air, floating in the air. It's him. Everyone looked up and their expressions changed. The young man was lying on the back of the snow python, holding a green foxtail grass in his mouth, yawning as he sat up. He lowered his head to look at the mountain peak below and said angrily, "Someone is causing trouble in the duty hall again? Do you really not put this young master, the hall master of the law enforcement hall, in your eyes?" "It's the hall master." Lin Hua's pupils shrank slightly as he hurriedly ran out and bowed. "This lowly one, Lin Hua, greets Lord Hall Master." "What's going on?" The young man looked at Lin Hua and asked. Lin Hua wanted to say something but hesitated. "Speak," the young man said. Although his tone was very calm, it carried a great deterrent force. Lin Hua's body trembled as he said, "Lord Hall Master, it's like this." In a few words, he gave a clear account of what had happened. "Take back the Qilin tactic, and the Heavenly Wolf Devil book?" The young man was slightly startled, and asked suspiciously, "How come this young master didn't know that our Dragon God Hall has such a rule?" Lin Hua was in a dilemma. But at this moment, the 10th elder took a step forward and landed beside Lin Hua. He looked at the young man and said, "It was this seat who set this rule. If this young master remembers correctly, you are only the temporary island master of the first island. Do you have the qualifications to set the rules?" The young man was puzzled. The 10th elder proudly said, "The entire Dragon God Hall belongs to us dragons, not to mention this trivial rule. So it's like that. Then this young master will also set a rule. From now on, those who are not from the Dragon God Hall are not allowed to step into the Dragon God Hall. Dragons are no exception. Those who violate this rule will be killed without mercy." The young man smiled lazily. Those who are not from the Dragon God Hall are not allowed to step into the Dragon God Hall? This rule, isn't it obvious that it's against the 10th elder? People muttered. Because the 10th elder was not from the Dragon God Hall. "How dare you?" The 10th elder roared. He actually dared to ride on the dragons' heads and behave atrociously. Did he really think that he was invincible? The young man smiled indifferently and looked at the 10th elder. "You don't seem to be from the Dragon God Hall. The exit is over there. Get lost." "Awesome. This is called usurping the host's position. This is called domineering." Everyone's heart trembled. Since the establishment of the Dragon God Hall, there had never been such a powerful figure. It was clear that even if you dragons came to the Dragon God Hall, you have to follow the rules. Looking at the 10th elder again, he was so angry that his body was trembling, full of anger. The dragons ruled the divine land and the entire ancient world. Who in the world did not respect them like gods? But at this moment, someone actually tried to usurp the host's position. How could the dignity of the dragons be offended by such a lowly human? The young man frowned and looked at the 10th elder. Didn't you hear? I told you to get lost. Boom. The first elder could not bear it, and his aura rolled out. Stop. However, at this moment, a cold shout was heard. A woman in white came through the air like lightning, and landed in front of the young man. It's really her. Qin Feiyang muttered. The ancestral dragon of the White Dragon clan. The 10th elder immediately flew to the side of the woman in white and said angrily, Lord Ancestral Dragon, this person is simply lawless. Speak clearly. The woman in white looked at the young man and frowned. Not only did he openly go against us dragons, but he also usurped the host's position and changed the rules of the Dragon God Hall. He also said that if anyone who is not from the Dragon God Hall wants to enter the Dragon God Hall, they will be killed without mercy. He's clearly talking about us. The first elder said. The woman in white looked up at the young man and asked, Is that so? Yes. You get lost too. The young man nodded lazily. What? He actually asked the ancestral dragon to get lost. Everyone was dumbfounded. This person's arrogance and dominance could no longer be described with words. Chapter 2491. The 10th elder also looked at the young man in a daze. It was one thing to be arrogant in front of him, but he actually dared to be arrogant in front of Lord Ancestral Dragon. Lord Ancestral Dragon, did you see that? Did you see that? How is he respectful to us dragons? Coming back to his senses, the 10th elder roared. Ever since the dragons ruled the ancient world, no one had ever dared to be so presumptuous in front of them. Even the people of the Dragon Slayer Palace did not have the guts. The white-clothed woman's expression was naturally quite ugly. She had long heard that this person was very arrogant, but when she saw it with her own eyes, she realized that it was even worse. The white-clothed woman said in a deep voice, What right do you have to tell me to get lost? Yi Zhong is not here, so I'm the boss. Do you think I'm qualified? The young man said lazily, You're the boss. Don't you know that Yi Zhong is also working for us dragons? No matter what, it's not your turn to be the king of the Dragon God Palace. The white-clothed woman shouted, Yi Zhong working for you is Yi Zhong's private matter. What does it have to do with me? I only care about the Dragon God Palace. Right now, I'm the boss of the Dragon God Palace. Do you have any objections? The young man played with the dog's tail grass at the corner of his mouth. His lazy expression was full of playfulness. Haha. The white-clothed woman raised her head and laughed. Clang. All of a sudden, a snow-white thin sword appeared, as if it was condensed from black ice. The place was suddenly filled with a bone-chilling cold. A heaven-defying artifact. Qin Feiyang's pupils contracted. When the surrounding onlookers saw this, they fled into the distance without looking back. The young man's expression did not change, and he said, Looking at your posture, you're ready to fight with me? If I don't teach you a lesson, you won't know what you're capable of. The white-clothed woman grabbed the thin sword and slashed at the young man. The sharpness was earth-shattering. The young man still looked lazy, but the snow python under his feet was panicking to the extreme. You followed me for so long, yet you're still so timid. Can't you be a little more mature? The young man hit the snow python's head hard. The snow python felt wronged. Of course you're not afraid because you're strong. But what about me? He was only at the peak of the 9 heavens realm. Seeing the ancestral dragon, and the heaven-defying divine artifact, who wouldn't be afraid? The young man shook his head, and raised his head to look at the white-clothed woman. He slowly removed the dog's tail grass from the corner of his mouth. Suddenly, with a flick of his index finger, the green foxtail immediately turned into a stream of light, and swept towards the white-clothed woman. Clang! When the green foxtail grass collided with the thin sword, an ear-piercing metallic sound and dazzling sparks were produced. The white-clothed woman was shocked. The collision between the thin sword and the green foxtail grass actually made her arm numb. The next moment, the green foxtail was sent flying back into the young man's hand. However, the white-clothed woman was also forced back a few steps, and the thin sword in her hand almost slipped out of her hand. This! The white-clothed woman looked at the green foxtail grass in shock. The 10th elder was also in disbelief. The surrounding disciples were even more furious, and their eyeballs were about to fall out. A green foxtail grass could actually fight against a heaven-defying divine weapon? Qin Feiyang was no exception. He was deeply shocked. Although the thin sword in the white-clothed woman's hand was not unsealed, it was still a heaven-defying divine weapon. How could such an ordinary dog's tail grass be so powerful? Wait! Suddenly, Qin Feiyang thought of the fight between the young man and Yi Zhong. When the two were fighting, a golden glove suddenly appeared on Yi Zhong's hand. Although it was like a flash in the pan, this glove was definitely not simple. At that time, the young man also used the green foxtail grass to fight against the glove. Looking at it this way, this green foxtail grass was probably not as simple as it seemed on the surface. I'll say it again. Those who are not from the Dragon God Palace are not allowed to step into the Dragon God Palace. Get out of here immediately. With the green foxtail grass in his mouth, the young man looked listlessly at the white-clothed woman and the 10th elder and said. The 10th elder clenched his hands and growled. Lord Ancestral Dragon, release the seal and kill him. What? Release the seal of the heaven-defying divine weapon? Are you kidding me? Are you trying to kill us? Dragons, you've gone too far. The surrounding crowd immediately roared. If the seal was released, not to mention the first island, the entire Dragon God Palace would be turned into ashes in an instant. These beasts, the dragons, did not care about their lives at all. And at the same time, when the young man heard the 10th elder's words, he suddenly disappeared from the back of the snow python. The next moment, he stood behind the 10th elder and said, What did you just say? I didn't hear it clearly, say it again? The 10th elder's body and mind tightened, and he quickly ran behind the white-clothed woman. The white-clothed woman also turned around at the first moment, protecting the 10th elder behind her. If you're so timid, don't jump out. The young man chuckled and returned to the back of the snow python. Then, he lay down with his hands behind his head and crossed his legs. Looking at the young man's posture, the 10th elder was both angry and afraid. The white-clothed woman frowned. If you don't leave in 3 breaths, then I'll be serious. At that time, don't say that I didn't give you face. With that, the young man closed his eyes and took a leisurely nap. Lord Ancestral Dragon. The 10th elder looked at the white-clothed woman. The white-clothed woman glanced at the young man, and then looked at the dog's tail grass at the corner of his mouth. Her eyes flickered. Suddenly, she lowered her head and looked at Qin Feiyang. An inexplicable light flashed in her eyes. She looked at the young man again and said, Fine, we won't take back the Qilin technique and the serious demonic book. The ancestral dragon actually gave in? Everyone looked at the white-clothed woman in shock. They thought that the white-clothed woman would definitely make a move, but they did not expect that she would lower her head and compromise with the young man. The 10th elder was also stunned. Lord Dragon Sovereign ordered to take back the Qilin technique and the serious demonic book to confirm whether the young man and Li Buer are related? And the current situation is already obvious. Since the goal has been achieved, there is naturally no need to make a move. The most important thing is that you have already angered everyone when you said that you would release the seal. There is a truth since ancient times. You have to understand that water can carry a boat, but it can also capsize a boat. The white-clothed woman transmitted her voice. The 10th elder said secretly, But I have my own ideas. The white-clothed woman waved her hand and looked at the young man. In this way, we don't have to leave the Dragon God Palace. As long as you follow the rules, everything is negotiable. The young man did not open his eyes and smiled faintly. Okay, in the future, we will mind our own business. The white-clothed woman nodded. Looking at the white-clothed woman's attitude, everyone could not calm down for a long time. This was too unbelievable. The ancestral dragon was not just giving in. It was a pleading attitude. Just how strong was this young man? The most important thing was, the young man was so arrogant, but the dragon sovereign actually sat by and did nothing? The hidden mystery was worth pondering over. Qin Feiyang was also pondering over a problem. The young man had helped him more than once, but he could not figure out why the young man would help him. One had to know. He and the young man were neither relatives nor friends. They only met on the plains. After getting to know each other, They did not have any deep contact. Qin Feiyang was a very sensitive person. He was used to fighting and scheming. He did not believe that there would be anyone in this world who would selflessly help others. Therefore, the young man's actions inevitably made him suspicious. Forget it. When there is a chance, I will ask him face to face. Qin Feiyang shook his head. He could not guess the young man's thoughts. He had to ask him face to face.